Feigning ignorance is one of the most insidious tools in the sociopath's arsenal. At first glance, it seems harmless, even clumsy, but beneath the surface lies a calculated, manipulative maneuver designed to disarm confrontation, dodge blame, and confuse the target into submission. When a person pretends not to understand what they've done wrong, they force you into the uncomfortable position of explaining something you already know they comprehend. This tactic drains your emotional energy while keeping their hands clean, feigning ignorance to avoid accountability. The brilliance of this trick is that it doesn't deny the accusation outright. Instead, it undermines the premise. A simple, "Wait, what are you talking about?" or "I didn't even know that was a problem," delivered with wide eyes or a tilted head, creates enough plausible deniability to stall accountability. The more emotional you become trying to explain what they already know, the more irrational you appear, making them seem like the reasonable one. It's a psychological smokescreen. By pretending to be clueless, they force you to question your assumptions and lower your defenses. You might even start second-guessing your perception of events. Maybe they really didn't understand, you tell yourself. And just like that, the conversation shifts from their wrongdoing to your tone, your clarity, your expectations. Feigning ignorance is particularly cruel because it mirrors a childlike innocence, making it difficult to confront without feeling like a bully. But make no mistake, it's a mask. Behind it is someone perfectly aware of their impact, using confusion as a weapon to delay justice, avoid growth, and maintain power. Playing the victim preemptively to avoid being blamed later. One of the most chilling manipulative tactics is when someone plays the victim before any blame can even be assigned. This isn't just defensiveness, it's strategic emotional warfare. The manipulator weaponizes sympathy in advance, constructing a narrative where they are already the wrong party, thus stealing your ability to hold them accountable before you even try. It's emotional insurance, a shield forged from crocodile tears and carefully planted sob stories. By preemptively casting themselves as fragile, hurt, or overwhelmed, they create a psychological minefield. If you confront them, you look like the aggressor. Suddenly, you're attacking someone who just went through so much, or who's really trying their best under difficult circumstances. And if you push too hard, they'll crumble, publicly, dramatically, so that everyone sees your frustration as cruelty and their manipulation as pain. It's especially sinister because it's disguised as vulnerability. They might confess to insecurities, bring up past trauma, or highlight recent hardships, all while subtly distancing themselves from whatever wrong they're about to commit. The groundwork is laid in advance, so when the inevitable fallout comes, they've already secured emotional allies, pity points, and plausible justification. You'll feel hesitant to confront them, guilty even. And that's the whole point. It's a preloaded defense mechanism that poisons the air before conflict arises. By making themselves the first to bleed, they flip the script. You're no longer responding to betrayal. You're accused of kicking someone when they're down. It's manipulation laced with martyrdom, and it's designed to keep you silent, manufacturing coincidences to appear omnipresent or meant to be. This trick is as seductive as it is unsettling. Some manipulators go to disturbing lengths to engineer artificial coincidences, making it seem like fate keeps pulling you together. They show up at your favorite cafe by accident, know your favorite song by chance, or mention a book you just posted about without admitting they scrolled through your feed for hours to find it. It feels magical. It feels destined. But it's anything but organic. By crafting these serendipitous moments, they create the illusion of cosmic alignment, a sense that your lives are inexplicably intertwined. It's designed to bypass your rational mind and trigger a deep emotional reaction. After all, how could someone know that about you unless it was meant to be? How could they just happen to be there again and again unless the universe was conspiring to bring you together? But behind this fantasy is ruthless planning. They observe, stalk, analyze. They tailor their presence to appear just when you're vulnerable, just when you need comfort, or just when you're starting to doubt. The effect is spiritual manipulation, a sense of shared destiny that bonds you to them quickly and deeply. It makes you drop your guard. It makes you believe in them. The danger lies in how this illusion strips you of critical thinking. You stop questioning patterns and start seeing signs, and that's when they strike, when you're emotionally tethered by the false magic they manufactured. It's not serendipity, it's surveillance in disguise, designed to blur the line between love and control, imitating your mannerisms to build false rapport. There's something eerily flattering about someone who just gets you, someone who talks like you, laughs at the same pace, uses your expressions, or shares your quirky hand gestures without even trying. It feels like you found a kindred spirit, someone who sees the world through the same lens. But when that mirroring is too perfect, too fast, and too deliberate, it's not chemistry, it's strategy. Imitating your mannerisms is a manipulative shortcut to intimacy. It taps into the brain's natural affinity for the familiar. When someone reflects your movements, speech patterns, and micro behaviors, your subconscious registers them as safe, trustworthy, and even attractive. This is the same psychological mechanism that makes people bond with those who resemble them, and that's exactly what the manipulator is counting on. They study you with precision, how you nod, the rhythm of your laugh, the slang you use, the way you tilt your head when you're unsure, or the phrases you rely on when you're nervous. Then they play them back to you like a polished mirror. You feel seen, maybe even soul-connected, but what you're actually seeing is your own reflection. This imitation builds a synthetic rapport that feels real. You open up faster, you trust them more deeply, you assume they understand you because they behave just like you. But it's a lie, cloaked in familiarity. The manipulator has no intention of connecting. They're imitating to manipulate, not to bond. You're not forming a connection, you're being baited into one, and by the time you realize how perfectly they molded themselves to fit you, you're already emotionally invested in someone who never truly existed. Pacing your speech pattern to subconsciously influence trust. There's a subtle art to manipulation that doesn't involve shouting, demanding, or even persuading. It involves rhythm, timing, silence. When a manipulator paces your speech pattern, matching your tempo, tone, and verbal cadence, they're not just making conversation. They're slipping past your defenses and quietly reprogramming how you feel about them. This technique feels so natural that most people never notice it. If you speak slowly and thoughtfully, they do too. If you're passionate and animated, their energy rises to match. Their voice seems to wrap around yours like an echo. You feel heard, understood, aligned, and your brain responds by releasing tiny signals of safety and familiarity, because we're evolutionarily hardwired to trust those who sound like us. But it's not about connection, it's about control. Pacing speech isn't just mimicry, it's a strategic way to calibrate your emotional state. Once the manipulator has matched your rhythm, they begin to lead it. Slowly, subtly, they change the tempo. They inject urgency or calm into the conversation, guiding your emotional response without you realizing what's happening. They speed up to incite anxiety, slow down to draw you in, pause at just the right moment to let a word hit harder. Every silence is calculated, every inflection rehearsed, and because they sound like you, your guard drops. You mistake manipulation for empathy. You start agreeing with them before your brain catches up. It's hypnosis in plain sight, voice-to-voice persuasion that bypasses logic and aims directly at your nervous system. It doesn't just earn trust, it hijacks it, making you laugh just before delivering an insult, softens the blow. Laughter is disarming. It drops your guard, loosens tension, and makes you feel safe right before the knife slides in. One of the most cunning psychological tactics is when someone uses humor as a smokescreen to disguise an insult, slipping cruelty into a moment of levity so it stings less, but cuts deeper. This tactic isn't just about getting away with being mean, it's about controlling how you receive their hostility. The setup is always the same. They get you laughing. Maybe it's a shared joke, an inside reference, or a funny story that draws you in. You're smiling, relaxed, open. Then, just as you're fully engaged, they strike, "You're so emotional, like it's cute how everything gets to you." Or, "Wow, look at you trying to be deep today." It's a jab hidden inside a joke, and your brain freezes for a second, unsure whether to laugh or flinch. That confusion is intentional. By pairing the insult with laughter, they soften your instinct to defend yourself. If you react, you risk looking sensitive or humorless. "It was just a joke," they'll say, gaslighting you into believing your hurt feelings are the real problem, not their cruel delivery. Over time, this technique erodes your confidence. You begin to accept subtle digs as normal, and worse, you might even laugh along with them just to maintain the peace. But each laugh costs you a piece of self-respect. The joke isn't funny, it's a leash. And every time you let it slide, the chain tightens. Asking questions, they know the answer just to control the conversation. It feels harmless at first. They ask you something simple, something you're sure they already know. "Wait, didn't you say you were working late tonight?" Or, "You still haven't talked to her, right?" You brush it off, thinking they forgot, or maybe they're just confirming. But they're not seeking answers. They're seizing control. When someone repeatedly asks questions they already know the answer to, they're not being curious, they're being dominant. This tactic gives the illusion of innocence while positioning them as the one guiding the conversation. Every time you answer, even if it's obvious or repetitive, you're yielding control, confirming facts on their terms, playing by their script. They become the one driving the narrative, while you're busy responding to things they already understand. It's also a way to test your consistency without revealing their suspicions. If your answer shifts even slightly, they catch it. They mentally flag you as dishonest, defensive, or vulnerable, even if your variation was minor or unconscious. Meanwhile, their own intentions remain hidden, protected under the mask of innocent inquiry. But the most insidious part is how it subtly diminishes your confidence. You start to question whether you remembered things right, whether you really said what you thought you said. The manipulator, on the other hand, looks increasingly composed, calm, methodical, and concerned. It's a performance of patience, but it's built on power. These questions aren't about truth, they're about surveillance. Each one is a leash, disguised as curiosity, tightening just enough to remind you who's leading the conversation and who's following. Losing on purpose, early in a competition to lower your guard. There's something strangely comforting about an opponent who doesn't seem threatening, someone who fumbles, hesitates, or even lets you win. You relax, you get confident, you stop watching your back. That's exactly the point. One of the most deceptive manipulation tactics is when someone intentionally loses early in games, debates, business, or social dynamics, not out of weakness, but strategy. The false defeat is a calculated move designed to make you drop your defenses. When someone lets you believe you're better, stronger, or smarter than them, you stop treating them as a threat. You underestimate them. You may even start giving them hints, tips, or access to your inner circle, thinking they're not competition. But behind the scenes, they're watching, studying your patterns, your strengths, your blind spots. Then, when it really counts, they strike. Suddenly, the person who wasn't trying crushes you. They win the deal, they get the promotion, they destroy your argument in public, and you're left scrambling, shocked at how easily they flip the game. You question yourself, your instincts, your memory. How did you miss it? How did they change so fast? But they didn't change. They revealed themselves. This tactic works because it taps into pride and complacency. It makes you feel superior just long enough to blind you. And when the real game begins, you're emotionally unprepared. Losing on purpose is not weakness. It's the calm before the ambush. A manipulator who plays dumb in the beginning is often the most dangerous one in the end, getting you to owe them something small to control you later. It begins with something so minor, so seemingly generous that you don't even think to question it. They bring you coffee when you didn't ask, offer a ride when it's slightly out of their way, cover a small bill and brush it off with a smile. Don't worry about it, they say. It's nothing. But it's not nothing. It's the first move in a psychological transaction you didn't agree to, one designed to make you feel indebted and therefore controllable. Manipulators understand a deep truth about human nature. We hate feeling like we owe someone. Reciprocity is baked into our social DNA. When someone gives to us, we feel an invisible pressure to return the favor, even when the gift was unsolicited. The sociopath exploits this instinct masterfully, offering small, casual favors that come preloaded with silent strings. Days or weeks later, the debt surfaces. They ask for a favor, expect compliance, or subtly guilt-trip you when you hesitate. After everything I've done for you, they might say, leaving you stunned. It doesn't matter how trivial the original gesture was. What matters is that it now hangs over your head like a contract you never signed. The brilliance of this tactic is its subtlety. You'll look ungrateful if you refuse their help, and selfish if you resist repaying it. That's the trap. They gain leverage over your conscience, making you second-guess your boundaries. It's emotional blackmail in disguise, disarming you with kindness, then twisting it into a leash. The price of the favor was never money. It was control. Faking deep vulnerability to disarm your skepticism. Few things melt defenses faster than someone who opens up about their pain. When someone shares a raw emotional story, a childhood trauma, a recent heartbreak, a lifelong insecurity, it instantly changes the atmosphere. You lean in, you soften, your judgment dissolves. That's exactly what the manipulator is counting on. Faking deep vulnerability is a masterstroke in psychological manipulation because it weaponizes empathy against you. It doesn't matter if their story is true, exaggerated, or entirely fabricated. What matters is the effect, the trembling voice, the downcast eyes, the long pause before revealing something they've never told anyone. Your instincts scream, this person is hurt, not harmful. You stop asking questions, you stop being skeptical. You become a caregiver, not a challenger. And once that wall of scrutiny falls, they slip through. Suddenly, you're making excuses for them. You overlook red flags because they've been through so much. You offer support, patience, trust, because it feels cruel not to. They've shown you their scars, so they must be safe, right? But what you don't see is the calculation behind the tears, the way they time their confessions, the way their deepest wounds conveniently surface only when you start pulling away or asking too many questions. This isn't connection, it's camouflage. By appearing vulnerable, they invert the power dynamic. You feel guilty for doubting them, and in that emotional haze, they move freely, unchecked. Manipulators who fake vulnerability aren't looking for healing. They're looking for access. They're not wounded. They're hunting. And your empathy is the open door they walk through, talking about enemies who resemble you to manipulate your behavior. They'll mention someone casually, an ex, a former friend, a co-worker, someone they clearly disdain. But as they talk, a quiet chill runs through you. The way they describe this enemy feels eerily familiar. She was so sensitive, always taking things the wrong way. Or, he needed constant validation, such a drain. You nod, but inside, something twists. Because you're sensitive, you do seek reassurance. And suddenly, you're wondering, is that how they see me too? This tactic is psychological sleight of hand, The manipulator isn't just venting, they're laying bait by describing a disliked person in a way that mirrors your traits or behaviors. They're planting a seed of self-doubt. It's a veiled warning. Don't be like them. And because the connection is never direct, you can't call it out without sounding paranoid. You're not like that, they'll say. I didn't mean you. But the implication lingers, sharp and unspoken. It's a method of preemptive control. Without directly criticizing you, they steer you away from behaviors they dislike, silencing your needs, muting your personality, editing your authenticity. You become hyper-aware of how you come across, afraid to be labeled like them. And over time, you shrink yourself to stay on their good side. It's not feedback. It's fear-mongering through comparison. They mold your behavior by creating ghosts of people you never met, prototypes of what not to be. And the more you hear about these cautionary tales, the more you contort yourself, not realizing you're being reshaped by a story that was never truly about someone else. It was always about controlling you, overloading you with small kindnesses. Before a major ask, it begins with generosity, thoughtful messages, tiny favors, compliments that feel genuine, acts of support so subtle they almost go unnoticed. They remember your coffee order, offer to help with something minor, cheer you on when no one else is watching. It feels refreshing, like someone actually sees you, but behind the charm is a transaction you haven't been told about yet. The manipulator is building a debt, brick by brick, and when they cash it in, it won't be small. This tactic preys on the psychological principle of reciprocity. Human beings are wired to return kindness. When someone gives to us, especially repeatedly, we feel pressure to give back, even if we never ask for the help. And that's the setup. Each tiny favor is a silent investment, not in you, but in control. Then, when the moment is right, they ask for something big, a favor that crosses your boundaries, a compromise that costs you, a decision that benefits them far more than it benefits you. And when you hesitate, they don't need to guilt trip you. You'll do it yourself. After everything they've done for me, you'll feel obligated, trapped, manipulated, but unsure if you're allowed to be angry. Because how can you say no to someone who's been nothing but kind? The truth is, those small kindnesses weren't free. They were currency, a carefully built illusion of goodwill designed to buy your compliance. And by the time the real price is revealed, you're already emotionally indebted, just the way they planned. Gaslighting your memory of events, subtly and slowly. It doesn't start with bold lies. It starts with tiny corrections, gentle, casual, almost loving. That's not how it happened, they say with a smile. You're misremembering again. You brush it off. Maybe you did get the timing wrong. Maybe the tone wasn't what you recall. But the more it happens, the more unsure you become. This isn't about miscommunication. It's a deliberate erasure of your reality, done drop by drop until your confidence dissolves completely. Subtle gaslighting is more dangerous than outright denial because it's gradual, it's patient, and it doesn't just challenge what happened, it rewrites it. They might insist you agreed to something you know you didn't, or remind you of a conversation that never occurred. When you push back, they don't argue, they pity you. You always get so confused. Your memory's been off lately. I think you're just tired. These aren't statements. They're psychological poison, disguised as concern. The goal isn't just to win an argument. It's to make you distrust yourself. Over time, you begin questioning your instincts, your memory, your judgment. You start deferring to their version of events, even when it feels wrong in your gut. And once they control your perception of the past, they control your interpretation of the present, of reality itself. Gaslighting isn't just manipulation, it's identity erosion. You're not just being told you're wrong, you're being slowly disconnected from the one thing that anchors you, your mind. And by the time you realize something is off, you're already asking them what's real because you've forgotten how to trust yourself. Agreeing with you passionately, then twisting your point later. It feels electric when someone passionately agrees with you. They nod intensely, echo your words back to you, even finish your sentences. You feel seen, validated, maybe even admired. But sometimes this kind of agreement isn't a meeting of minds. It's a trap being quietly set. The manipulator isn't aligning with your ideas because they believe them. They're storing your words like ammunition, preparing to twist them later when it suits their agenda. At first, they mimic your conviction. Yes, I totally agree with you. People should speak their truth. You feel connected. You open up more. You start speaking freely, letting your guard down, believing this is someone who shares your values. But later, in an argument, they throw your own words back at you, with just enough distortion to make them sting. Suddenly, speak your truth becomes, so now you're just saying whatever you want without caring how it affects people. It's disorienting. You try to defend yourself, but it's like arguing against a warped reflection of your own voice. They twist your meaning just enough that you start to doubt your own words. Maybe you were too harsh. Maybe you did sound arrogant. You find yourself backtracking, clarifying, apologizing for things you never actually said, at least not like that. That's the genius of the tactic. It creates a sense of betrayal without the manipulator ever having to raise their voice. They weaponize your own authenticity, using your earlier confidence as leverage to control you later. The trust they built through agreement becomes the very tool they use to make you question everything, creating tension and releasing it to bond you via trauma bonding. It begins with a rush, an emotional high that feels electric. Maybe they praise you intensely, make you feel seen in a way no one else ever has. But just as quickly, the warmth fades. A sharp comment, an unexplained coldness, a sudden withdrawal of affection. You're left confused, hurt, and scrambling to figure out what you did wrong. Then, just when you're about to pull away, they come back. Softer, sweeter, apologetic. The relief hits like a drug, and that's exactly what they're counting on. This cycle of tension and release is the foundation of trauma bonding. The manipulator creates emotional chaos, then plays the hero who soothes it. They become both the source of pain and the cure. Your nervous system, hijacked by the constant spikes of fear and relief, starts to equate their approval with survival. You don't just want their affection, you need it to feel okay. The brilliance and cruelty of this tactic lie in its rhythm. The tension isn't constant, it's strategic. Just enough cruelty to destabilize you, just enough kindness to keep you hooked. The psychological roller coaster conditions you to crave their validation like oxygen. When things are good, it feels euphoric. When things are bad, you blame yourself, and you wait desperately for the next high because you've learned that pain always precedes love in their world. Over time, your identity warps. You don't know where they end, and you begin. You start accepting their emotional volatility as passion, as depth, as fate. But it's not fate. It's a chemical leash, expertly tightened each time they make you suffer, then offer relief, giving vague praise that can later be withdrawn or used against you. At first, the praise feels good. It's subtle, almost humble. You've really got a presence about you, they say with a half smile, or there's just something different about the way you think. You're flattered, even if you're not quite sure what they mean. That's exactly the point. The praise is vague, ambiguous, and hard to define, not because they lack the words, but because they want the power to redefine it later. Vague praise is a manipulator's blank check. It hooks into your need for approval, but keeps you guessing. You start working harder, not just to maintain the compliment, but to figure it out. What exactly did they mean? What did I do right? This uncertainty keeps you tethered to their opinion, constantly seeking more specific validation that never quite comes. Then comes the twist. One day, they change the tone. That presence they once admired, now it's a little too much. That different way of thinking, suddenly it's a bit scattered or hard to follow. They never have to lie or contradict themselves. They simply reframe what they once praised. And because the original compliment was so abstract, you can't pin them down or prove the shift. You're left confused, questioning yourself, and craving the version of their approval that felt good. It's a psychological leash, praise that flatters just enough to hook you, but stays shapeless enough to be reshaped as punishment. It's not admiration. It's control disguised as kindness, and it leaves you chasing clarity that was never meant to arrive, telling you a secret to coax one out of you. It starts innocently enough. They lean in, drop their voice, and say, "I've never told anyone this before." You feel honored, chosen, like you've been given access to something raw and real. They reveal a secret, something vulnerable, personal, even scandalous. You feel the weight of it, the intimacy, and that's exactly what they want. Not because they trust you, but because they want you to match it. This is not about connection. It's bait. By sharing a calculated secret, they're not exposing themselves. They're testing you. They're creating a false sense of emotional equality where you feel compelled to offer something equally deep in return. It taps into your desire to be fair, to not feel one-sided. You don't want to feel like you're withholding when they're clearly being so open. And so you spill. But while your secret is real, raw, unguarded, maybe even dangerous to share, theirs was chosen, designed, crafted to appear confessional without actually making them vulnerable. It might even be exaggerated or entirely false. It's a decoy meant to unlock your truth. Once you've opened up, the balance shifts. They now hold something real over you, something they can use, mock, weaponize, or simply remember for when control is needed. You, on the other hand, have nothing, just the illusion of closeness built on a lie. The manipulator doesn't need your trust. They need your secrets. And by appearing vulnerable first, they lure you into the trap willingly, smiling as you hand over the pieces of yourself they plan to keep. Pretending to be curious about your pain while cataloging your weaknesses. They lean in gently. Their voice softens. "What was that like for you?" they ask, eyes full of what looks like concern. In that moment, it feels like someone finally wants to understand you, not just your actions, but your wounds, your history, the hidden scars you rarely share. You feel safe, heard. You begin to open up, piece by piece, thinking you found someone who truly cares, but you haven't. What you found is a predator taking inventory. This isn't empathy, it's data collection. The manipulator masks their interrogation as compassion. They ask about your childhood, your regrets, your fears, your betrayals, not to comfort, but to study. Every story you share becomes a tool, every crack in your voice, a note in their mental file. They're not listening to understand, they're listening to use. Later, they'll revisit those same vulnerabilities, not overtly at first. A subtle jab, a half joke about that thing you once cried over. Or worse, they'll twist your pain to question your reactions. Are you sure this isn't just like what happened with your dad? Suddenly, your trauma isn't sacred, it's ammunition. And because you willingly gave it to them, they can claim innocence. You feel betrayed, exposed, stupid even, for trusting someone with your most fragile truths. But that's the cruelty of it. They didn't force you to open up. They invited you to, with false tenderness, with feigned interest, with a mask of warmth so convincing that by the time you realize it was all theater, your secrets are already in their hands, sharpened, loaded, and ready to be used against you. Insulting someone else in a way that could apply to you. Passive threat. They make the comment casually, almost like an afterthought. "I can't stand people who are so needy all the time," they say, sipping their drink, or, "Ugh, it's such a turnoff when someone is always looking for reassurance." You smile weakly, but something stirs in your chest, because deep down, you've done those things. You've had needy moments. You've asked for reassurance. You felt insecure. And now, suddenly, you're wondering, do they mean me? This is no accidental judgment. It's a passive threat, a calculated way to police your behavior without confronting you directly. By criticizing someone else for traits or actions that resemble yours, the manipulator sends a silent message. Don't be like that, or you'll disgust me too. The brilliance of this tactic is in its deniability. If you question them, they'll say, "What? I wasn't talking about you," as if you're being overly sensitive. But they want you to internalize it. They want you to monitor yourself, to suppress parts of who you are just in case you fall into that same category. And so you start shrinking, editing, walking on emotional eggshells. It's control through implication. You're not being directly told what to do, but you're being shown through subtle cruelty what not to be. The manipulator never has to get their hands dirty. They insult others to correct you, and if you flinch, they've already won. You've been warned, and now you'll think twice before showing too much, asking too much, needing too much, just as they planned. Overemphasizing loyalty as a virtue to control your actions. They talk about loyalty like it's sacred, like it's the highest virtue a person can offer. I value loyalty more than anything, they'll say with intensity, almost reverence. At first it sounds noble. Who doesn't want to be loyal, to be trusted? But underneath that high praise is a silent contract, one they expect you to sign without reading. Because to them, loyalty doesn't mean trust or respect. It means obedience, silence, submission. By glorifying loyalty, the manipulator creates a moral framework where any questioning of their behavior becomes a betrayal. Disagree with them? You're disloyal. Tell someone else what they did? You're a traitor. Set a boundary? You're no longer ride or die. Suddenly, your integrity is on trial, not because you did something wrong, but because you didn't bend to their will. And it cuts deeper because they often position themselves as fiercely loyal to you. I would never turn on you, they say. All I ask is that you do the same. But that loyalty is conditional, performative, and self-serving. It disappears the moment you stop being useful or compliant. Still, the guilt lingers in you because they made you believe that questioning them was a flaw in your character. The brilliance of this tactic lies in its disguise. It turns control into virtue. It demands silence under the name of honor. And if you dare push back, they won't just accuse you of disagreeing, they'll accuse you of being disloyal. And in their world, that's the worst crime of all. Predicting your behavior to create the illusion of knowing you. They look at you with that knowing smirk, the kind that says, "I've already figured you out." I bet you're the type who overthinks everything, they say, before you've even spoken. Or, you're probably going to cancel at the last minute like you always do, right? And just like that, you're on the defensive. You either confirm their prediction and feel exposed, or prove them wrong and still let them shape your behavior. Either way, they win. This trick isn't about intuition, it's about control. By predicting your actions, thoughts, or tendencies, the manipulator inserts themselves into the architecture of your identity. They claim insight into you that feels intimate, almost psychic, but it's a trap. Because once someone seems to understand your patterns, you start second-guessing your autonomy. You begin wondering if they really do know you better than you know yourself. Worse, you start living in reaction to them. Their predictions function like psychological anchors. Even when they're wrong, you feel seen or targeted. If you act how they said you would, you feel predictable, weak. If you don't, you're still dancing to their rhythm, proving them wrong like it matters. And all the while, they reinforce this eerie sense of closeness. I know you, I get you, I see through you, but they don't see you. They box you. They define you in ways that suit their control. The illusion of being known is intoxicating, but in their hands, it's a leash made of words. Every "I knew you'd do that" isn't insight. It's manipulation, dressed as intimacy. Pretending they don't care to make you work for their attention. They act indifferent, distant, casual, like nothing you do or say really affects them. You try to make plans. They're busy. You share something vulnerable, they brush it off with a joke. You text, they reply late or not at all. It doesn't feel like rejection exactly, just flatness. And that's what makes it so intoxicating. You don't feel dismissed, you feel challenged. You start to wonder what you did wrong, what you need to fix, how to make them see you again. And just like that, they have you. This is strategic emotional starvation. By pretending not to care, they flip the script. You become the one chasing, apologizing, performing, trying to earn back something you never really had in the first place. It triggers a primal fear of abandonment, rejection, invisibility. You start bending, shifting, shrinking yourself just to get a flicker of attention. And when they finally give it just a little, it feels euphoric. They've conditioned you to crave their scraps. This manipulation works because it mimics intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological hook used in gambling and toxic relationships. Unpredictable, inconsistent validation keeps your brain spinning in loops, waiting for the next hit. The less they seem to care, the harder you work. You interpret their coldness as confidence, their distance as power. You mistake neglect for mystery. But they're not mysterious. They're calculated. They know exactly how much attention to withhold to keep you off balance. Their indifference isn't a lack of emotion. It's a form of control. And the more you try to win them over, the deeper you fall into a game you were never meant to win. Rewriting a story with new details each time to control the narrative. At first, the story sounds simple. Maybe it's about a falling out with a friend, an unfair boss, a past relationship gone wrong. You listen, empathize, believe, but then, days later, weeks even, they bring it up again, and something's off. A key detail has changed, a timeline shifted, a reaction softened or exaggerated. You blink confused, wondering if you misremembered, but you didn't. They did, on purpose. This is narrative control by subtle revision, manipulation through memory distortion. The sociopath doesn't just lie, they edit. They reshape reality in increments, layering new elements into old stories to cast themselves in a more flattering light or paint others as increasingly toxic. Each retelling isn't a recounting, it's a recalibration of your perception. What begins as a personal anecdote becomes a carefully curated script with only one truth, theirs. And the genius of this tactic lies in its pace. They don't overhaul the story all at once. That would be too obvious. Instead, they drip feed changes until the original version is buried beneath the latest draft. You find yourself adjusting your emotions each time, feeling angrier at the villain, more sympathetic to them, less sure of the facts. And if you question the inconsistency, they'll say you must have misunderstood. That's how gaslighting begins. The goal isn't just to be believed, it's to own the truth, to be the sole historian of every conflict, every betrayal, every wound, until their version becomes your reality. And by the time you realize the truth has been edited, it's too late. You've already started seeing the world through the story they wanted you to believe, using forgetfulness as a weapon to deny or delay consequences. They forget, conveniently, repeatedly, selectively, not the things that matter to them, never their schedule, their needs, their priorities, but always the things that matter to you, the boundary you set, the promise they made, the hurtful thing they said. Oh, I didn't realize that bothered you. Wait, did we really talk about that? I honestly don't remember. It sounds innocent, human, but it's not forgetfulness, it's erasure, and it's a weapon. By pretending to forget, the manipulator escapes accountability without confrontation. They don't have to argue, justify, or admit wrongdoing. They just erase it. Now you're the one on the defensive, trying to prove that something even happened. You repeat yourself. You second-guess your memory. You start questioning whether you're being too sensitive or dramatic. It's gaslighting in its most subtle form, wrapped in a shrug and a soft, "I just don't recall." This tactic buys them time, space, and control. If they forget your boundary, they can cross it again. If they forget the lie they told, they can tell a new version. And if they forget how they hurt you, then the pain must not have been real, at least not to them. And that's the trap. The more you try to hold them accountable, the more you look like the problem. Weaponized forgetfulness is not a lapse. It's a tactic, a reset button, a way to dodge the consequences without ever saying, I refuse. Because they didn't refuse, they just forgot. And the more they forget, the more you remember, alone, frustrated, and slowly losing the will to keep bringing up things that seem to disappear every time they become inconvenient. Starting drama elsewhere, so you'll see them as a stabilizing figure. They walk into the room with an exhausted sigh and a story. Someone's betrayed them, disrespected them, misunderstood them again. They're not looking for advice. They're looking for an audience. You listen, drawn in by the emotional intensity. You feel protective, even loyal. You think, at least they're honest with me. But what you don't realize is the chaos they're describing, they created it, deliberately. This manipulation tactic is all about contrast. The sociopath stirs up drama with others, friends, family, co-workers, then returns to you as the calm in the storm. You're not the target this time, so you breathe easier. You feel special. You're the safe one. You're the person they can really talk to. But this is no accident. They ignite fires elsewhere to make you feel like the sanctuary. And while you think you're being confided in, what's really happening is positioning. They're placing themselves at the center of your emotional compass, making themselves seem reasonable, sane, even noble in comparison to the craziness they conveniently surround themselves with. But if you look closer, the stories never quite add up. The villains change, the drama follows them, and somehow they're always the misunderstood hero. Over time, this illusion deepens. You start trusting their perspective over your own. You defend them. You distance yourself from others who've wronged them. And without realizing it, you're isolated, tethered emotionally to the very person who's been creating storms just to appear as the one holding the umbrella. They don't just want your sympathy, they want your dependency. Withholding compliments until you're desperate for approval. At first you don't notice it. They're polite, friendly even, but strangely quiet when you succeed, silent when you look your best, unmoved when you try your hardest. You wait for a simple, that was impressive, or you look amazing, but it never comes. And the silence starts to echo. It doesn't feel like indifference. It feels intentional, and that's because it is. This is not neglect. It's control. A calculated withholding of affirmation meant to create a void so deep you begin craving their approval like oxygen. The manipulator knows exactly how powerful their words can be, and they choose not to use them, because if they praised you too early, you'd feel secure, confident, free. But if they starve you of validation long enough, you'll do anything to earn it. You start trying harder, dressing for their eyes, speaking to impress them, performing instead of living, and every small crumb they do give, a mild, not bad, a faint smile, feels like a feast, because you're starving, and they've made themselves the only source of nourishment. Withholding compliments isn't about being modest or reserved. It's about creating a power imbalance where they decide when you're allowed to feel worthy. And over time, you internalize the belief that if they're not impressed, you must not be enough. Your self-worth becomes hooked to their silence, and their approval becomes your addiction. But they're not waiting for you to shine. They're waiting for you to break. So when they finally offer praise, you'll cling to it like salvation, not because it's honest, but because they made you need it, mirroring your values until you're emotionally invested. They agree with everything that matters to you. They light up when you talk about justice, kindness, ambition, creativity. Whatever fuels you, they reflect it right back. I totally believe that too, they say. That's exactly how I see the world. It feels like fate. You think, finally, someone who gets it. But what you don't see is that they're not showing you who they are. They're showing you yourself. This isn't connection. It's emotional identity theft. Mirroring your values is a calculated move. It bypasses surface-level compatibility and targets your core, the things you believe in. Because when someone shares your values, you feel safe, you trust faster, you open wider, you let them in deeper, believing that if your inner worlds align, everything else will fall into place. And that's when they lock you in. They don't just mirror beliefs, they amplify them. If you're passionate about animal rights, they're suddenly vegan. If you crave authenticity, they talk endlessly about being real. If you prize loyalty, they'll swear they'd never betray anyone. It's not real conviction. It's a performance curated to win your attachment. And once you're emotionally invested, once you've told yourself this person is your mirror, you stop questioning. But the mask slips over time. They start contradicting themselves, acting in ways that violate the very values they claim to share. When you call it out, they gaslight you, or worse, suggest you've changed. But the truth is, those values were never theirs. They were bait, a carefully chosen disguise meant to gain your trust and use your own moral compass to lead you straight into their control. Sabotaging your other relationships while pretending to support them. They'll smile when you talk about your best friend, nod when you mention your sister, laugh along when you share stories about your co-workers. That's so great you have people like that, they'll say. But beneath the surface, they're already working to cut those ties, not with open hostility. That would be too obvious. No, this is sabotage dressed as concern, dripping with sweetness and subtext. And it starts with the smallest seeds of doubt. Are you sure she's really happy for you? They'll ask. I don't know, he just gives me a weird vibe. Or worse, I just think you deserve better. It's subtle, disguised as insight, but it's designed to make you look twice at the people who love you, people who might notice the manipulator's games and pull you out before you're too deep. So they isolate you, one suggestion at a time. Over time, you start withdrawing, you cancel plans, you keep things private, you feel oddly conflicted when you talk to your own friends, ashamed even, because they've made you question their intentions while reinforcing the idea that only they truly understand you. And if those relationships begin to fracture, the manipulator is right there, comforting you. I hate seeing you treated this way, but it was them who lit the match. They want you tethered to them and them alone, because the fewer people you trust, the easier you are to control. Their goal isn't to protect you, it's to isolate you in plain sight, so that when you finally fall, there's no one left to catch you but them. Invoking morality or justice selectively to suit their needs. They speak with righteous conviction. It's not about me, it's about what's right. They appeal to fairness, to ethics, to higher ground. They'll quote values like honesty, integrity, respect, only when it serves them. In arguments, they'll act like guardians of justice. When they want something from you, they'll invoke duty, responsibility, what a good person would do. But the moment the same moral lens is turned toward their behavior, it shatters. Suddenly, it's different, complicated, or somehow your fault for not understanding. This is manipulation draped in moral superiority. They don't care about what's right, they care about what's useful. When you hold them to the very standards they weaponize against others, they dodge, minimize, or shift the blame, because the rules don't actually apply to them. They're tools, temporary shields to win arguments, provoke guilt, and bend your sense of justice into a leash around your neck. And the trap is effective because it preys on your integrity. If you're a decent person, the accusation of being unfair, cruel, selfish, or hypocritical hurts. They know this. They rely on it. They make you believe that if you don't comply, you're violating your own values. Meanwhile, they violate those same values behind the scenes without shame. This tactic doesn't just control your actions, it poisons your conscience. It makes you question your own goodness while painting them as the noble victim. They masquerade as the voice of morality, but behind that voice is pure manipulation, calibrated to make you feel like doing what they want is the right thing to do, even when it isn't, especially when it isn't. Using your language/slang to fake compatibility. It feels like a spark, like someone just gets you. You say something in your own voice, your tone, your rhythm, and they bounce it right back. Same slang, same phrases, same casual quirks. You call something wild, and suddenly they do too. You joke in a specific rhythm, and they mirror it perfectly. It feels effortless, familiar, almost like meeting a version of yourself in someone else. But it's not chemistry, it's mimicry with an agenda. When someone deliberately adopts your language, it's not always because they're like you. It can be because they want you to believe they are. Words are deeply tied to identity. The way you speak reflects your background, your values, your culture, your inner wiring. So, when someone mirrors your vocabulary and cadence, your brain reads it as kinship. You feel seen, safe, understood, and that's when you start to trust. But for the manipulator, that's exactly the goal. They're not bonding, they're baiting. By speaking your language, they slide under your radar. You stop noticing red flags because everything sounds right. You associate their presence with comfort. You begin to open up faster, laugh easier, share more. But it's not you they care about. It's your access, your loyalty, your emotional availability. And once you're hooked, the mask can shift. Their tone may harden. Their real voice, one you never heard, starts to bleed through. And by then, you're already invested. You weren't talking to someone like you. You were talking to someone who studied you. Compatibility was never mutual. It was manufactured, word by word, changing the subject strategically to dodge accountability. You bring something up, something that hurt, confused, or crossed a boundary. For a moment, it seems like they're going to listen. They pause, maybe nod, then suddenly they pivot. Well, what about that time you disappeared for 2 days? Or, I just think it's crazy that you're even focused on this when we haven't even talked about how stressed I've been lately. And just like that, the focus shifts, the spotlight moves, and you're left defending yourself instead of holding them accountable. This isn't forgetfulness. It's not being off topic. It's a surgical redirection, a deliberate escape hatch from responsibility. Strategic subject changing is psychological judo. Your concern becomes an opening they use to throw you off balance. You came in trying to express your pain. Now you're backpedaling, explaining, apologizing, questioning if you were ever justified in bringing it up. Their detour doesn't just derail the conversation, it rewrites its purpose entirely. You're no longer confronting harm, you're managing their emotions. They might do it with anger, deflection, humor, or even fake vulnerability. Whatever the method, the goal is the same. Make the conversation so chaotic, off-topic, or emotionally charged that the original issue is buried under new emotional debris. And it works because you care, because you want resolution, because you're willing to pause your needs to get through to them. But that pause is the trap. The moment you chase their diversion, they're free, unaccountable, untouched, and you're left feeling unheard, disoriented, and somehow guilty for even trying. They didn't just dodge the bullet, they handed you the gun and made you believe you pulled the trigger. Feigning spiritual or emotional growth to win sympathy. They'll tell you they've changed, they've done the work. Maybe they quote books on healing, drop buzzwords like shadow work, alignment, or emotional accountability. They talk about how toxic they used to be, how much they've reflected, how they're learning to be better. Their voice softens, their eyes hold a kind of weathered vulnerability, and you start to believe them, because who doesn't want to believe in growth, in redemption? But when a manipulator feigns spiritual or emotional growth, it's not to heal, it's to disarm. This act isn't rooted in self-awareness, it's rooted in performance. They speak the language of growth, not to embody it, but to exploit it. They learn the phrases that trigger your compassion. They cry about their past mistakes, not to make amends, but to anchor themselves deeper in your empathy. The more evolved they seem, the harder it becomes for you to hold them accountable in the present. You start excusing their behavior. They're still healing. They're trying. You silence your gut when it screams because they sound so self-aware. You forgive things you shouldn't. And every time they mess up, they'll pull out the same tired story of progress, how far they've come, how hard they're trying, how they used to be worse. But real growth changes behavior. This is just a costume, and underneath the enlightened words is the same manipulative core, using your hope against you. You want to believe they've evolved, but the truth is, they've only evolved their tactics, and now they know how to weaponize healing itself. Praising you only when it serves their interests, they know exactly when to say the right thing. "You're amazing at this," they murmur when they need a favor. "No one understands me like you do," they whisper just as you're about to pull away. Their compliments feel warm, intimate, like little treasures meant just for you. But look closely and you'll see a chilling pattern. Their praise isn't given freely. It's deployed with precision, like currency. It only appears when there's something to gain. This isn't real admiration. It's emotional bribery. The manipulator doesn't uplift you to build you. They do it to bend you. Their flattery is always strategic, designed to soften resistance or coax compliance. You'll notice how their validation comes in waves, generous when you're useful, absent when you're not. When you're fulfilling their needs, they spotlight your worth. When you assert yourself or create distance, the praise vanishes, replaced with coldness, criticism, or silence. It keeps you hungry. You start to associate their compliments with your value. You crave those moments of approval, start working harder to earn them again. And that's the trap. They've made your self-esteem contingent on their needs. When they praise you, it's not because they see you, it's because they want something. Control, obedience, access, your smile, your silence. Eventually, you realize they don't praise your soul, they praise your compliance. And the moment you stop serving their agenda, the warmth disappears like it was never there at all. Because it wasn't. It was bait. Beautiful, intoxicating bait. Inventing past trauma to justify bad behavior. They lower their eyes and speak softly, the room going still as they share something heavy, something painful, a story of abandonment, abuse, betrayal. Maybe they say they were cheated on, neglected, hurt in ways that explain why they act the way they do now. It sounds raw, believable, even haunting, and instantly your anger softens. How can you stay upset with someone who's been through so much? But sometimes that story isn't true. Inventing past trauma is one of the most manipulative ways to dodge accountability. It hijacks your empathy and recasts their harmful behavior, rage, cruelty, betrayal, not as a choice, but as a symptom. It's a get-out-of-jail-free card, wrapped in sorrow, and once you buy into it, they're no longer the one who caused harm. They're the one who's been hurt the most. It's especially insidious because it preys on your humanity. You want to help. You want to be patient. So when they lash out, go cold, cheat, lie, you tell yourself, it's not them, it's what happened to them. And that's exactly what they want. The more you excuse their damage, the more damage they're allowed to cause. Real trauma doesn't justify hurting others, but fake trauma is even more dangerous because it's not rooted in pain, it's rooted in strategy. They don't want to heal. They want to manipulate you into staying when you should be walking away. And the more detailed, tragic, and untouchable their backstory becomes, the harder it is to see that their true injury isn't from the past. It's what they're doing to you right now, using humor to disguise hostile intent. It sounds like a joke, just a little teasing. Relax, I'm only kidding, they say, after the sting has already landed. But your gut twists. because the laughter feels forced, the tone a little too sharp, the smile not quite reaching their eyes. You laugh it off because what else can you do? Call them out and you're too sensitive. Stay quiet and you absorb the insult. Either way, they win. This tactic is psychological camouflage, weaponized humor designed to humiliate, criticize, or intimidate without consequence. It gives them a back door, an escape route, cloaked in sarcasm or wit. "You're such a mess," they joke after you make a small mistake. Don't worry, no one notices when you're awkward like that. The room may laugh, you might too, but something inside you sinks, because they weren't kidding. Not really. By hiding behind humor, they create a fog of confusion. Did they mean it? Were they just being playful? Are you overreacting? And in that uncertainty, they carve out power. They test your boundaries without ever acknowledging they've crossed them. If you let it slide, they push further next time. If you object, they mock you for not being able to take a joke. It's emotional erosion disguised as entertainment. The intent isn't laughter, it's dominance, humiliation that wears a grin. And over time, you start shrinking around them, flinching at their jokes, unsure of what's real and what's venom dipped in charm, because they're not trying to be funny. They're trying to get away with being cruel and make you feel guilty for noticing, triangulating you with someone else to induce jealousy or loyalty. They mention someone casually, too casually. I was talking to Sarah yesterday, and she just gets me in a way no one else does. Or, I don't know, Mark never makes a big deal about this kind of thing. You weren't asking about Sarah or Mark, but now they're in the room, invisibly sitting beside you, infecting the conversation with tension. You're no longer alone with the person you trusted. You're being measured against someone who isn't even there. This is triangulation, the deliberate insertion of a third party into the emotional dynamic to provoke insecurity, jealousy, or competition. It's not about the other person, it's about you, about shifting your focus away from your needs and onto your position. Are you still the favorite? Are you still enough? You start questioning yourself. Am I doing something wrong? Am I not supportive enough, funny enough, sexy enough? You may even begin trying harder, giving more affection, more forgiveness, more silence, just to edge out the ghosts they dangled in front of you. That's the point. The manipulator knows jealousy is a powerful motivator, but loyalty, earned through fear of replacement, is even stronger. They create invisible rivalries to keep you off balance, obedient, and emotionally tethered. You become more loyal, not out of love, but out of fear of being replaced, of being discarded, of being not enough. And if you confront them, they'll twist it. You're overreacting, they'll say. You're just insecure, but you're not. You're being played in a game you didn't know you were in, with pieces they carefully arrange to make you feel like you could lose them at any moment. Refusing to define the relationship to maintain control, they act like you're everything until you ask what you are. Why label it, they say, eyes full of charm. Let's just enjoy the moment. You want clarity, something real to hold on to. But every time you reach for stability, they vanish behind vagueness. And that's not an accident, it's the plan. Refusing to define the relationship isn't indecisiveness, it's a power play. By keeping the connection ambiguous, they keep you unsteady, always trying to earn more. One day they're calling you their soulmate, the next they're cold, detached, claiming they never made promises. You live in limbo, where nothing is promised but everything is implied. They feed you enough closeness to keep hope alive, but never enough to feel secure. That uncertainty becomes addictive. You analyze every word, every text, every look. You become so focused on figuring out what the relationship means that you stop asking what it's costing you. Meanwhile, they stay in full control, free to take, free to disappear, free to compare you to others without ever cheating, because nothing was ever official, right? Nothing was ever said. And if you demand clarity, you're painted as needy, intense, too much. They twist your very human need for security into a flaw, something that pushes them away. You start apologizing for wanting definition, for wanting to know where you stand. But that's the cruelty. They do know where you stand, beneath them, reaching, guessing, hoping. Because as long as the relationship has no shape, no name, no edges, it belongs entirely to them, and you remain caught in something you can't even define, let alone escape, making you defend yourself repeatedly to drain your energy. It starts with an accusation, subtle, vague, or absurd. You never really listen to me, they say, or you always twist things. You're caught off guard, but you respond, you explain, you clarify, you try to be calm, reasonable, understanding, but it doesn't stop. The next day, another jab. So I guess it's just okay to ignore my feelings. Again, you defend. Again, you explain. Again, they act misunderstood. What you don't see at first is that this isn't about resolving anything. It's about exhausting you. Repetition is their weapon. They loop the same arguments, the same doubts, the same exaggerated versions of your actions until your brain is too tired to argue. At first, you're motivated to set the record straight, but soon your energy shifts from truth-telling to damage control. You're constantly trying to prove you're not cruel, not selfish, not broken. The emotional toll builds, the anxiety builds, and in your growing desperation to be understood, you become more compliant, less likely to push back. This tactic is psychological warfare masked as conversation. They don't want clarity. They want control. Every round of defense chips away at your stamina and your self-esteem. You begin second-guessing your intentions. You begin apologizing for things you didn't do. You start to wonder if maybe they're right because you're just so tired of explaining. And once you're depleted, once you stop fighting and just give in, they've won. Not because they were right, but because they never needed to be. They just needed you to stop believing you were. Calling your intuition paranoia. You bring it up gently at first. Something feels off. A shift in their tone, a lie that doesn't quite line up, a story that echoes a little too perfectly. You don't accuse, you question, but the moment your instincts surface, they strike. You're being paranoid. Just like that, the floor beneath you cracks. They don't need to explain themselves. They just need to convince you that you are the problem. Dismissing your intuition as paranoia isn't just condescending. It's calculated. It undermines your inner compass, the quiet voice trying to protect you. They frame your awareness as delusion, your sensitivity as instability. You always overthink everything, they say with a sigh, shaking their head like they're worried for you, not about what you're seeing. It's a gaslight cloaked in concern, and it works because doubt is contagious. You start replaying everything in your head, wondering if you are too sensitive, too emotional, too suspicious. You hesitate before speaking up again. You silence yourself to seem chill, rational, easygoing. You abandon your instincts just to preserve the illusion of peace. But this tactic doesn't just shut you up, it isolates you from yourself, the part of you that knows, the part that senses deception before the facts catch up. They don't want to explain their behavior. They want you to stop trusting the one force in the world that can expose them, your intuition. Calling it paranoia isn't about concern. It's about control. It's about making you afraid of your own mind so they can keep you exactly where they want you, quiet, uncertain, and blind. Encouraging reckless behavior so they can later shame or control you. At first, they seem like your biggest hype person. Just do it. Live a little, they say with a smirk, nudging you toward that extra drink, that impulsive purchase, that risky decision you were hesitant about. They laugh when you hesitate. You're too uptight, they tease, casting doubt on your caution. So you do it. You take the risk. You say yes. You ignore your gut. And in that moment, you feel free, wild, accepted. But that freedom, it's bait. Because the moment your actions cause any consequence, they change. Now, they're the voice of reason. I told you that was a bad idea. You really embarrassed yourself. You never think things through. The same person who pushed you off the ledge is now acting like they had nothing to do with it, like they're above you. They encouraged your fall so they could stand over you. This is strategic sabotage disguised as fun. The sociopath isn't interested in your growth or your pleasure. They're interested in control, earned through your mistakes. By nudging you into recklessness, they create evidence they'll use later to undermine your credibility, shame you into submission, or keep you emotionally dependent. You'll hesitate to assert yourself next time, remembering how foolish you look. You'll second-guess your instincts, thinking, maybe they were right about me after all. The genius of this tactic is how disarming it feels at first, like spontaneity, like friendship, like love. But it's not love, it's a trap. They weren't cheering you on. They were setting you up to fall and rehearsing the speech they'd give when you did, creating urgency to force bad decisions. They press you with wide eyes and rushed words. You have to decide now. This opportunity won't come again. If you walk away, don't expect it to be here later. It's not just pressure, it's a manufactured crisis, and it's designed to override the one thing that could protect you: time to think. Urgency is one of the most powerful tools in manipulation because it hijacks your nervous system. It activates fear, fear of missing out, of losing something, of regret. Your brain switches from logic to survival. You don't weigh the pros and cons. You react. You choose under pressure. And the manipulator knows exactly how to choreograph that reaction. They create artificial deadlines, inflate consequences, pretend patience isn't an option. They act like the clock is ticking when in reality, it isn't. That car about to be sold, that one-time chance to fix things, that emotional ultimatum, say you love me now or don't say it at all. The goal isn't resolution, it's submission. They don't want you to think it through. They want you to act in panic, guilt, or desperation, because when you're rushed, you'll agree to things you never would under calm reflection, a financial decision, an emotional commitment, a moral compromise. And later, when you feel trapped, they'll say, well, you agreed, but you didn't agree freely. You agreed under duress, under pressure crafted to collapse your boundaries. Urgency, in their hands, becomes a weapon, not to help you choose, but to make sure you don't realize you had a choice at all. Acting confused or innocent. When caught in lies, you confront them, facts in hand, your voice trembling from holding it in too long. The message they denied sending, you have the screenshot. The thing they swore they never said, you remember it word for word. But instead of admitting it, they look bewildered, hurt even. Wait, what? I don't understand, they say softly, brow furrowed. Why are you so upset? I genuinely don't know what you're talking about. And just like that, the truth starts to dissolve. This is not confusion, it's performance. When a manipulator acts innocent or confused in the face of clear evidence, they're not seeking clarity, they're seeking to destabilize you. They know exactly what they did, but by feigning ignorance, they shift the focus away from their lie and onto your reaction. Suddenly, you're explaining again, repeating yourself, defending your memory, your emotions, your right to be upset. And while you're unraveling, they sit there, blank, calm, untouchable. This tactic is a psychological smokescreen. It buys them time, space, and power. They use your humanity against you, your need to make sense of things, your discomfort with being the aggressor, your vulnerability in wanting to be understood. And every time they look at you with that wide-eyed confusion, they're sending a silent message. If I don't admit it, it didn't happen. It's a masterclass in denial. Not denial of the act, but denial of reality. And when you walk away feeling frustrated, uncertain, even guilty for confronting them, you've just witnessed the full power of a lie delivered without words, veiled in innocence that was never real. giving backhanded compliments to control your self-esteem. You actually look really good today, for once. You're smarter than I thought you'd be. I love how you don't care what people think. It's kind of brave. You smile because you feel like you should. But inside, something twists, because that wasn't really praise, was it? It was a jab disguised as a gift, a low blow tucked inside a ribbon, and they knew exactly what they were doing. Backhanded compliments are not slips of the tongue. They're precision tools of control. The manipulator delivers them to create confusion, to make you question your worth without starting a fight. It's psychological erosion. One moment, you're flattered. The next, you're second-guessing yourself, your appearance, your intelligence. You start wondering if their approval is the exception, not the rule. And that's the trap. These compliments keep you tethered to their validation. You crave more, but you never know what version of yourself will earn it. They keep you off balance, subtly insecure, always hoping for real praise that never quite arrives. You start working harder to please them, to be better, to prove them wrong without ever confronting the insult buried beneath the compliment. The worst part? If you confront them, they retreat behind feigned innocence. Wow, I was just trying to be nice. You're reading too much into it. You're made to feel hypersensitive, even ungrateful. But you're not. You're being managed. By doling out praise with poison laced inside, they don't just shape how you see yourself. They make sure you never rise high enough to forget who you need approval from. And that's the point. Using selective memory to rewrite your arguments. You sit there, heart pounding, replaying every word you said, because now they're accusing you of something that didn't happen. You screamed at me, they insist, when you remember being calm. You said, I'm the worst person you've ever known, they claim, quoting lines you never spoke. You stare at them, confused, even horrified. Are they lying, or are you misremembering? That doubt is exactly what they want. Selective memory is one of the most disorienting forms of psychological manipulation. The person doesn't deny the conflict, they just twist it. They recall only the parts that serve them. Your tone, exaggerated. Your words, reimagined. Their role, minimized or saintly. By pretending to remember things differently, they don't just defend themselves, they rewrite the argument to paint you as the aggressor, the unstable one, the one who blew things out of proportion. And they do it with such calm, convincing confidence that you begin to question your own sanity. Maybe I did say it that way. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I'm remembering this wrong. You start to self-edit. You withdraw. You hesitate to confront them next time. Because what's the point if they'll just reshape reality again? This manipulation is terrifying because it's not loud. It's subtle erosion. It doesn't attack you directly. It makes you attack yourself. They chip away at your memory until you rely on their version of events instead of your own. And once they've replaced your truth with theirs, they own the narrative, and you're left lost in a story you no longer recognize, yet somehow feel responsible for. Flipping between hot and cold to create dependency. One day, they're all over you, attentive, affectionate, saying everything you've ever wanted to hear. Their eyes burn with intensity. You feel chosen, adored, like nothing else in the world matters. Then, without warning, the warmth vanishes. They grow distant, distracted, indifferent. Your messages are ignored. Your presence is met with silence or irritation. You're left confused, aching, desperate to know what changed. This isn't emotional instability. It's a carefully crafted cycle of control. By flipping between hot and cold, the manipulator creates an emotional addiction. When they're loving, it feels euphoric, like a high. And when they withdraw, it's gutting. That contrast carves deep anxiety into your nervous system. You start chasing the version of them that made you feel alive, believing you did something to lose it. That, if you just act right, love better, say less, try harder, they'll come back. And sometimes they do, briefly, just enough to spark hope. just enough to reward your compliance and reinforce the cycle. This roller coaster wires your brain to crave their affection like a fix. It stops being about love. It becomes about relief. Relief from the cold, relief from the silence, relief from the invisible punishment you never fully understand. You start measuring your worth by their warmth. You feel powerful when they're close and worthless when they're not. But the truth is, you're not in a relationship. You're in a trap, one designed to make you emotionally dependent on the very person who keeps pulling the rug out from under you. And they never plan to let you off the ride, punishing you with silence instead of direct confrontation. At first, you think they're just tired. Then the hours pass. The day, still no text, no glance, no response to your voice. The room is filled with absence, heavy, deliberate. You rack your brain, retrace your steps, search for the moment you might have said or done the wrong thing. But they won't tell you. They won't say anything at all. And that's the punishment. The silent treatment isn't about conflict resolution. It's about dominance. This isn't space to cool down. It's emotional exile. Instead of expressing their anger, disappointment, or hurt, the manipulator vanishes into a wall of silence, leaving you desperate for re-entry. And that's the point. You feel discarded, invisible, irrelevant. You apologize just to make the silence stop, even when you don't know what you're sorry for. By withholding words, affection, even eye contact, they create an emotional vacuum you'll do anything to escape. You'll grovel, over-explain, beg for reconciliation, because the silence is so loud it begins to scream. And every second they withhold connection reinforces a brutal message. I control when you are loved. I control when you are acknowledged. They never have to yell, never have to say something cruel. Their silence becomes the weapon, a cold, calculated way to make you feel guilty, small, and dependent. It teaches you a lesson without ever delivering a sentence, just a void that says, you hurt me, now feel it in isolation. But you didn't just lose their voice, you lost your own, because now you speak only to end the silence, not to be heard. Praising your enemies just to destabilize you. They know exactly who makes your stomach tighten, an ex, a rival, a friend who hurt you, or someone who simply triggers your insecurities. And out of nowhere, they bring them up, but not with critique or caution, with admiration. Honestly, I kind of respect her. She's really confident. He's actually pretty funny when you get to know him. You freeze. The words hit harder than an insult ever could. This isn't accidental. When a manipulator praises someone they know unsettles you, they're not being neutral or fair. They're pulling the ground out from under your feet. Their goal isn't admiration, it's destabilization. They want you to feel threatened, inadequate, on edge. You start questioning yourself. Am I boring compared to them? Less attractive? Less interesting? And right on cue, your confidence begins to slip. They don't just praise that person. They elevate them in the one space where you thought you were safe. They create invisible competition, forcing you to perform harder, give more, prove your worth. It's emotional sabotage dressed as casual commentary. If you confront them, they'll play innocent. What? I thought you were over it. I'm allowed to like other people. And suddenly, you're the one who looks petty or insecure. But this isn't about liking someone else. It's about making you doubt yourself. By lifting up the people who hurt or intimidate you, they quietly tear you down without ever getting their hands dirty. And the more off balance you feel, the easier you are to control, because nothing weakens your voice like the feeling that you're already losing the competition you didn't know you were being forced into. Encouraging oversharing so they can use it against you. They lean in close, eyes warm, voice gentle. You can tell me anything, they say. I want to understand you. And so you open up, slowly at first, then all at once. Your fears, your traumas, your regrets, things you haven't told anyone. They nod, they empathize, they make you feel seen. It feels sacred, like a rare kind of safety, but it isn't safety, it's surveillance. Manipulators encourage oversharing not to understand you, but to collect ammunition. They ask just the right questions, framed as curiosity or care. What hurt you the most? What's your biggest fear in relationships? Have you ever felt truly unwanted? It feels like intimacy, but it's excavation. They're not building trust. They're building a blueprint. Every confession becomes a lever, a way to hurt you later, a button they'll press when control starts to slip. At first, they'll use what you've shared to bond deeper. You're so brave for telling me that. That explains so much. I get you now. But over time, the shift begins. That thing you revealed in confidence, it becomes a weapon, thrown back in your face in an argument, mocked in a moment of coldness, or whispered to others when they need to discredit you. You feel betrayed, but they act shocked. I thought we could be honest, they'll say. You're overreacting. But deep down, you know, it was never about honesty. It was about power. They made your pain feel safe in their hands, then used it to build a cage. And now, every word you wish you could take back echoes louder than anything you could say next, pretending not to understand boundaries to keep violating them. You explain yourself, clearly, calmly, maybe even apologetically. I need a little space when I'm upset. Please don't comment on that again. I'm not comfortable with this. You hope they'll understand, but instead they look puzzled. Wait, what do you mean? I didn't realize that bothered you. You're being kind of rigid, don't you think? And suddenly, you're not defending your boundary. You're defending why you even have one. This isn't confusion, it's calculated ignorance. When someone pretends not to understand your limits, they're not misunderstanding you. They're testing you. By acting oblivious, they force you to over-explain, to doubt yourself, to question if your needs are too much. They reframe your boundary as an inconvenience, a misunderstanding, or worse, an emotional flaw. And while you're stuck trying to justify something that should never need justification, they cross the line again and again. Each violation is followed by a shrug, a weak apology, or a half laugh. I didn't know it was that serious. I thought we were past that. But they did know. They just don't care, because acknowledging your boundary means they'd have to respect it. So instead, they weaponize confusion, turning your personal space into a debate and your no into a negotiation. Over time, you start shrinking those boundaries yourself. It's easier than the conflict, easier than being made to feel difficult or dramatic. And that's exactly what they want, for you to abandon your limits so they never have to honor them. Because when someone pretends not to understand a boundary, what they're really saying is, I plan to cross it again, just try and stop me, using fake empathy to earn your trust. They look you dead in the eye, nodding slowly as you speak. Their voice lowers, softens, and they say exactly what you need to hear. That must have been so hard. I can't imagine what you went through. You feel a rush of relief. Finally, someone who gets it, someone who listens, who cares. You start to open up, to lean on them, but behind that soft gaze, they're not connecting, they're calculating. Fake empathy is one of the most disarming, manipulative tools because it mimics something sacred, being seen. The sociopath or narcissistic manipulator knows that genuine empathy lowers walls. It's the key that unlocks trust, especially for people who have been hurt before. So they study the cues, mirroring your body language, repeating your words, nodding at just the right moment. They use your pain to present themselves as your emotional safe space, but their concern is hollow, performed, not felt. You'll only realize it when it's too late, when the mask slips, when they interrupt your pain to talk about theirs, when your vulnerability is met with sudden indifference or weaponized in an argument, when you're left wondering how someone who seemed to understand so deeply can turn so cold, so cruel. It's because they never felt what they pretended to understand. They faked empathy to gain access to your trust, your secrets, your loyalty. And once you've bonded, they don't need the performance anymore. You gave them the key, and now they'll use it not to comfort you, but to control you, because fake empathy doesn't heal, it hunts. Love bombing, overwhelming affection to gain control. It feels like a dream. From the moment you meet them, they're captivated, obsessed even. Constant texts, deep eye contact, wild declarations. I've never felt this way before. You're everything I've ever wanted. They talk about soulmates forever, how lucky they are to have found you. You feel special, chosen, seen. What you don't see, what you can't see through the euphoria, is that this isn't love. It's control wrapped in roses. Love bombing is a high-pressure emotional assault disguised as romance. It's not about building intimacy. It's about accelerating dependence. The manipulator floods you with attention so fast, so intensely, that you don't have time to breathe, let alone think critically. They don't want to earn your trust. They want to hijack it. And it works, because it doesn't feel like a red flag. It feels like a fairy tale. You find yourself opening up fast, skipping steps, silencing doubts. You start relying on their constant validation to feel safe. But the truth is, this affection was never about you. It was bait. The more you give in, the more they pull back the curtain. The affection shifts. The warmth cools. You try to get it back. Do more. Please more. Become what you think they want. That's the trap. Because once you're hooked, they no longer need to love bomb. They've secured your attachment. Now comes the control, the criticism, the withdrawal. And you'll stay because you remember what it used to feel like. You'll chase the ghost of that intensity, not realizing it was manufactured from the start. Love bombing doesn't build love. It builds dependency. Fast, euphoric, and weaponized. Gaslighting, making you doubt your reality. It starts with small contradictions. You remember what was said. You remember how it felt. But when you bring it up, they tilt their head and smile just slightly. That's not what I said. You're imagining things. You're being dramatic. The moment you trust your memory, they deny it. The moment you express how something hurt, they tell you it didn't happen that way. And slowly, relentlessly, they begin to rewrite your reality until you no longer know what to trust, including yourself. Gaslighting is not a disagreement. It's psychological warfare. The manipulator doesn't argue to find truth. They argue to replace it. They don't want to win the conversation. They want to own the narrative, one that favors them, excuses their behavior, and casts doubt on yours. They use your emotions as evidence of instability, your pain as proof of your unreliability. You always do this. You're too sensitive. Everyone knows how emotional you are. You start to doubt not just what happened, but whether it happened. The terrifying power of gaslighting is in its slow corrosion. At first, you fight to be heard. Then you fight to be sure. Then you stop fighting entirely, unsure if you even have the right. You apologize when you were the one harmed. You ask permission to feel what you feel. You start relying on them to tell you what's real, because your grip on truth has been shattered. That's when they've won. Gaslighting isn't just manipulation, it's erasure of your clarity, your voice, your memory, your sanity, and it doesn't just break trust, it replaces it with dependence on them, on their version of everything, even when you know somewhere deep inside that something isn't right. Blame shifting, never accepting fault. No matter what happens, somehow it always circles back to you. You bring up how they hurt you, and suddenly they're the wounded one. I only said that because you were being impossible. If you hadn't acted like that, I wouldn't have reacted the way I did. The conversation flips, and you find yourself apologizing, explaining, defending, when you were the one who was hurt. This isn't miscommunication, it's blame shifting, a masterclass in never taking responsibility. Blame shifting is not just about avoiding guilt, it's about dominance. The manipulator refuses to own their behavior, instead making you believe you caused it. They frame their outbursts as reactions, their cruelty as consequence, their betrayals as forced responses to your flaws. "You made me do this" becomes the silent refrain, played on repeat until you internalize it as truth, and you start to believe it. You question your words, your tone, your actions. You replay moments, wondering if you did provoke them, if you could have said it differently, if you should have been more patient. That's the genius of blame shifting. It makes you responsible for fixing everything while they avoid all accountability. And if you push back, you're accused of being unfair, unforgiving, or always playing the victim. It's emotional whiplash wrapped in manipulation. Over time, you stop expecting apologies, you stop asking for change, you just work harder to prevent the next explosion, thinking if you just do everything right, they won't lash out again. But they will, because their goal isn't to resolve, it's to escape accountability. And as long as you're holding the guilt, they're free to keep breaking things without ever picking up a single piece. Silent treatment, used to punish or coerce. They don't scream, they don't slam doors, they don't even speak. Instead, they withdraw into a chilling, deliberate silence, not because they're hurt, but because they know exactly what their absence will do to you. The silence stretches for hours, then days, no eye contact, no response, just cold stillness that twists in your chest like rejection turned into a weapon. This isn't about space, it's about power. The silent treatment is a form of emotional starvation, a punishment delivered without words, forcing you to sit in discomfort, anxiety, and guilt, whether or not you did anything wrong. It makes you feel invisible, unworthy, confused. You replay everything in your head, searching for the moment you messed up. You start believing the only way to restore peace is to apologize, to chase, to submit. And that's the goal. They don't want resolution. They want control. By refusing to communicate, they control the emotional climate entirely. Your world becomes about getting them to speak again, not about being heard. You're no longer a person with feelings. You're a problem that needs fixing. Their silence says, "You don't deserve my attention. You don't exist until you behave." Eventually, you cave, not because you were wrong, but because you can't bear the weight of being emotionally exiled. And when they finally do speak, it feels like mercy. But it's not. It's a cycle, one they'll use again the next time you assert yourself. Because the silent treatment isn't just absence, it's dominance. A quiet, suffocating reminder that love, comfort, and connection are privileges they can take away any time you step out of line. Future faking, promising things they'll never do. They talk about the future like it's already written. Your name's on the lease, vacations booked, wedding songs picked out, the house you'll build together, the family you'll raise. Their words are vivid, detailed, dripping with certainty. You start picturing it too, letting down walls, leaning in. But what you don't know yet is that none of it is real. Not the trip, not the ring, not the life. Because they never intended to give you the future they promise. They only said it to control your present. Future faking is the art of selling dreams to buy loyalty. It's a manipulator's most seductive lie, one that doesn't look like a lie at all. In fact, it feels like love. It feels like commitment. But it's bait. Carefully crafted visions designed to keep you invested while they continue to give you nothing real. And the cruelest part? They often believe it in the moment. That makes it even harder to spot. You stay through red flags because they've already painted a beautiful picture of what's coming. You excuse bad behavior. Now, because soon things will be better, you silence your intuition because they've promised it's just not the right time. But it will be, eventually. Except eventually never comes. The promises fade, the plans stall. You begin to notice that nothing ever happens. You're always waiting, always reaching, always almost there. And by the time you realize the future was just a leash made of words, you're already tied to a person who never had any intention of building what they swore they would. They weren't planning a life with you. They were planning to keep you. Projection, accusing you of their own behavior. You catch them in a lie, and suddenly you're the one being dishonest. You question their loyalty, and they fire back with suspicions about you. The more they betray, the more they accuse. You start feeling like you're being watched, interrogated, doubted, when they're the ones doing exactly what they're blaming you for. This isn't defensiveness, it's projection, one of the most disorienting and cruel tactics in manipulation. Projection is when someone takes the parts of themselves they don't want to face, cheating, lying, manipulating, abandoning, and throws them onto you. It's a psychological trick that serves two purposes. It protects their ego and puts you on trial. You go from holding them accountable to proving your own innocence. And that shift isn't just frustrating, it's destabilizing, because you know you're not doing what they accuse you of, but their conviction makes you doubt. Why would they accuse me if they weren't sure? You wonder. You start questioning your tone, your friendships, your past. You feel watched, scrutinized. Every harmless behavior becomes something you analyze before doing. And in the meantime, they continue doing what they're accusing you of, untouched, unchallenged. It's psychological inversion. They break the mirror and hand you the shards, insisting your reflection is the one that's fractured. And if you push back, they accuse you of being defensive, secretive, acting guilty. You're stuck in a trap where denying becomes evidence against you. But the truth is, they see their own darkness and they can't bear to own it, so they pin it on you until you're the one carrying the weight of sins that were never yours to begin with. Pathological lying. Lies used to build false realities. They lie so effortlessly, so convincingly, that truth becomes irrelevant. Sometimes the lies are big, about jobs, relationships, past trauma. Sometimes they're small, about where they were last night, who they texted, what they meant by that message. But it's not the size of the lies that destroys you. It's the frequency, the way they layer one untruth over another until you're living inside a world they've invented, crafted word by word to keep you confused, dependent, and doubting everything except them. Pathological lying isn't just deception, it's construction, a false reality meticulously built to shape your perception. The manipulator doesn't lie just to hide things. They lie to create things. They rewrite the past, twist the present, and fabricate the future. They become the author of your reality, and you're just a character in their narrative, and the damage runs deep. You start to feel crazy. Details don't add up. Timelines don't match. Their stories change, yet they say it all with such conviction. You begin to doubt your memory, your instincts, your sanity. You might catch them once, confront them, and they'll either rage, deflect, or lie again. Better this time, more believable, more dangerous. Over time, the constant distortion erodes your sense of truth. You stop trusting yourself. You become emotionally paralyzed, afraid to question, afraid to believe. And that's exactly what they want. Because when you no longer know what's real, the only thing that feels stable is them. Pathological lying isn't carelessness. It's control by confusion. And once you're trapped in their fabricated world, the truth feels like betrayal, and the lies start to feel like home. Divide and conquer, breaking apart your support system. It starts quietly, a comment here, a raised eyebrow there. I just don't think your friend really gets you. Your sister seems jealous, don't you think? You always seem more drained after talking to them. They're not outright attacking anyone, not yet. They're planting doubt, and as you begin to question the people closest to you, you don't realize that you're being isolated, piece by piece, until you're standing alone, right where they want you. Divide and conquer is a devastatingly effective tactic. The manipulator knows that your strength comes from your connections, friends who speak truth, family who remind you who you are, people who might challenge the grip they're tightening around your life. So they target those bonds, not with obvious hatred, but with carefully calculated sabotage. They sow mistrust, they provoke tension, They paint themselves as your only safe person. Soon, your relationships start to shift. You stop confiding in friends because they don't understand the relationship. You pull away from family who don't like them anyway. You start wondering if maybe everyone else is the problem. And when things get hard, when the manipulator starts hurting you, you feel like you have no one to turn to, no one who will believe you, no one who's still there. And that's exactly the point. They separate you from your world to become your world, your source of validation, your emotional anchor, your only voice of reason, no matter how toxic it becomes. Divide and conquer isn't just about weakening your relationships. It's about making sure the only voice left in your life is theirs, even if that voice is the one breaking you. Baiting, provoking you, so they can call you unstable. It starts with something small, a snide comment, a backhanded joke, a strategic silence that leaves you burning with confusion. You try to stay calm. You ask what's wrong, try to clarify, try to rise above it, but they keep pushing. A subtle jab here, a twisted word there. You begin to unravel, your voice sharpens, your eyes fill, your hands tremble, and just when you finally snap, they lean back and say it. Wow, look at you. This is exactly what I mean. You're crazy. This is baiting, psychological entrapment designed to make you explode so they don't have to explain what caused the fire. The manipulator knows exactly which buttons to push. They study your insecurities, your wounds, your triggers, and when it suits them, they press them with surgical precision. The goal isn't communication, it's reaction. And the second you give them one, they play innocent. I was just trying to talk. Why are you being so aggressive? See, this is why nothing works with you. You feel humiliated, unheard, trapped, because you know the rage you showed wasn't born in a vacuum. But now, you look like the villain. Baiting isn't about resolving conflict, it's about manufacturing proof. Proof that you're unstable, emotional, difficult, that they're the calm, rational one while you're spiraling. It gives them cover. It turns your pain into a performance they can point at. And worst of all, it makes you question your own reactions, wondering if maybe, just maybe, they were right all along. Hoovering, reeling you back in with fake remorse. You finally pulled away. Maybe you blocked their number. Maybe you left the relationship. Maybe you just stopped responding. Your lungs begin to fill with clarity. And then, out of nowhere, they reappear. A long message, a sudden apology, a song they said reminded them of you. I've changed. I finally see what I did. You're the only one who ever really knew me. Your heart clenches because part of you still wants it to be real. This is hoovering, the manipulator's last-ditch effort to suck you back in, like the vacuum it's named after. But it's not about love, it's about control. When you walk away, you do something they cannot tolerate. You reclaim power, and in that moment, they panic, not because they miss you, but because they're losing their ability to use you. So they shapeshift into the person you wished they were all along. They mirror your pain, they say all the right things, they cry, they beg, they promise therapy, change, forever. And for a second, you believe them, because you want to, because the version they're pretending to be is the one you held on to through every lie, every breakdown. But once you're back, once the control is reestablished, the mask slips. The remorse fades, the cycle resumes, and this time it gets worse. Hoovering isn't healing, it's bait made of hope, a desperate manipulative performance designed to keep you tethered just when you were starting to fly. They don't want you back because they love you, they want you back because they hate losing, and they know exactly what to say to make you forget how hard it was to leave. Guilt tripping, using shame to control decisions. They don't demand, they don't shout, they simply sigh. Their eyes drop, their tone softens, and the weight of unspoken disappointment settles like a stone in your chest. I just thought you'd be there for me. It's fine, I'll handle it alone, like I always do. I guess I expected more from you. And suddenly, what was once your choice becomes your burden. This is guilt tripping, a quiet, crushing form of emotional coercion that turns your desire to be good into a weapon against you. Manipulators don't want to argue. They want you to surrender willingly. So they wrap their control in shame, making you feel like saying no isn't just selfish, it's a moral failure. They make you feel responsible for their emotions, their loneliness, their unmet needs. It's not about compromise. It's about control masked as hurt. The power of guilt tripping is its subtlety. You're not being told what to do. You're being made to feel bad for not doing it. And that distinction makes it harder to fight. If you push back, you feel heartless. If you comply, you feel hollow. Either way, you're left carrying an emotional debt you never asked for. Over time, you start preemptively folding to avoid the shame. You give more than you have. You stay longer than you should. You confuse guilt with obligation and kindness with compliance. And they know this. They count on your conscience. They use it. Guilt tripping doesn't guide you to do what's right. It corners you into doing what they want by convincing you that if you don't, you're not just disappointing them, you're betraying who you are. Triangulation, dragging third parties into drama. You thought it was just between you two, a private conflict, an honest conversation, a personal moment. But suddenly, there's a third person in the room, even if they're not physically there. Well, she agrees with me. Even he said you're overreacting. Everyone sees how difficult you can be sometimes. You weren't fighting the crowd, but now, somehow, it feels like you are. This is triangulation, the manipulator's favorite way to destabilize and divide. They pull in outside voices, real or imagined, to validate themselves and discredit you. It's not just about winning the argument. It's about making you feel isolated, outnumbered, and small. You start to question yourself. Maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe they're right. Maybe everyone's been thinking it and just hasn't said it out loud. And while you're busy doubting your reality, they're building their power. By dragging others into your conflict, they redirect your energy away from truth and toward defending your character. You're no longer discussing what happened. You're proving you're not crazy. Worse, triangulation creates invisible enemies. People you once trusted now feel distant, suspect, weaponized against you without your consent. You feel alone, cornered, dependent on the very person pulling the strings. Sometimes the third party is real. Sometimes it's entirely fabricated. But the effect is always the same: emotional chaos that keeps you chasing clarity, begging for reassurance, and forgetting to ask the most important question: why do they need an army if they're telling the truth? Because triangulation isn't just about dragging others in, it's about pushing you out of your own reality and replacing it with theirs. Smear campaigns, destroying your reputation behind your back. It starts quietly, a few concerns shared in confidence, a subtle "I'm worried about them" dropped into conversations with mutual friends. They never say anything too harsh, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. They've been acting off lately. I love them, but they're really not okay. And by the time you sense something's wrong, it's already growing roots. People look at you differently. Trusts shift. Rooms feel colder. You're being judged for things you never said, never did, and never got the chance to explain. This is a smear campaign, psychological warfare waged in whispers. The manipulator knows the power of preemptive storytelling. Before you even realize there's a war, they've painted themselves as the concerned friend, the wounded partner, the quiet victim. Meanwhile, you become the unstable one, the narcissist, the abuser, and because they work in shadows, always just concerned, never openly cruel, it's hard to prove anything. Harder still to undo it. They target your support system because they know isolation weakens you. If they can control how others see you, they can control how you see yourself. Suddenly, you're defending your character instead of healing from the damage they caused. And the more you try to explain, the more crazy or guilty you look, exactly as planned. Smear campaigns aren't just reputation sabotage. They're a strategy to erase your credibility before you even speak, to silence you by surrounding you with doubt. And the most devastating part? They often succeed because people are quicker to believe a calm liar than a truth teller gasping for air. Charm offensive, using charisma as a mask. They light up every room they walk into. Their smile is disarming, their words perfectly chosen, their presence magnetic. Everyone seems to adore them. Waiters, co-workers, even your friends. They're just so nice, people say. Enchanted. And you start to doubt the knot in your stomach, because how could someone so charming be capable of cruelty? That's the trap of the charm offensive. This isn't genuine warmth, it's a calculated performance. Manipulators use charisma like a weapon, cloaking their true intentions behind flattery, wit, and confidence. It's not about connection, it's about disarming you. They know how to read a room, mirror values, make people feel special. They make you laugh, make you feel chosen, make you believe they see you. But the version of themselves they show isn't who they are. It's who they need to be to win trust. And it works, because when the abuse starts, subtle jabs, emotional withdrawal, lies, gaslighting, no one believes you. You don't even believe yourself at first. Maybe I misunderstood, you think. Maybe I am overreacting. That's the genius of the charm offensive. It builds a protective wall of goodwill around the manipulator, one you're trapped behind. If you try to speak up, you're met with confusion, or worse, dismissal. But they're such a good person. Are you sure you're not just being sensitive? The mask protects them, and it isolates you. Charisma isn't proof of character, but in a manipulator's hands, it's the perfect disguise, drawing you in, blinding everyone else, and making sure that when the harm comes, you're the only one who sees it for what it truly is. Narcissistic rage, explosive anger. When challenged, it comes out of nowhere. One moment, the conversation is tense but manageable. You question something, gently, maybe even with love. You express a boundary, call out a lie, or simply don't agree. Then suddenly, the air shifts, their eyes narrow, their voice sharpens or erupts, and just like that, the person who once charmed you is gone, replaced by a storm of fury so intense it feels like you've done something unforgivable. This is narcissistic rage, not just anger, but a violent emotional eruption triggered by perceived threat to ego. It's not about what you said, it's that you dared to say it, to question their version of reality, to stand your ground. Narcissists tie their self-worth to control, admiration, and superiority. When that's challenged, even slightly, they don't reflect, they attack. Their rage is disproportionate, frightening, and meant to do one thing: shut you down. They scream, accuse, insult, or they may go cold, emotionally withdrawing, punishing you with silence and icy detachment. Either way, the message is clear: challenge me and you'll regret it. And it works. You learn to tiptoe around them. You keep your thoughts to yourself, not out of respect, but out of fear. You begin to edit who you are to keep the peace. But the peace is a cage, one built from the memory of their explosion. That rage wasn't a loss of control, it was control, a weapon of emotional terrorism used to keep you small, silent, and afraid. Because in their world, being questioned is an attack, and in response, they don't defend, they destroy. Shifting goalposts, changing standards so you always fail. You try, over and over you try. You fix what they asked you to fix. You say what they wanted to hear. You show up, tone it down, give more, hold back. For a brief moment, it feels like you're enough. But then, it moves. The standard, the rule, the definition of okay. Suddenly, what was once good is now not quite right. The compliments vanish, the criticism returns, and you're back at the starting line, wondering what you missed. This is shifting goalposts, a manipulative tactic designed to keep you chasing validation you will never fully earn. The manipulator is never satisfied because satisfaction isn't the goal. Control is. By constantly redefining what you must do to be worthy, they keep you on edge, self-doubting, desperate, compliant. You're always almost enough, but never quite. They change expectations without warning, rewrite the rules mid-conversation, and then blame you for falling short. You start working harder, thinking if you just get it perfect, they'll finally relax. But perfection doesn't exist in their world. It's a moving target they keep just out of reach. It's how they maintain power. By keeping your self-worth tied to an unreachable bar they refuse to define. And when you finally break, tired, confused, hollow, they'll say you're the problem, that you're too sensitive, too needy, that they tried but you just can't keep up. But the truth is, you were never failing. They were just never planning to let you win. Because the more you chase, the more they control, and the more you believe that their approval is the only thing that can save you from the failure they engineered. Devaluation, suddenly treating you as worthless. One day, you're everything, their muse, their savior, the most beautiful soul they've ever known. You're showered with affection, idealized in every word, placed on a pedestal, so high you begin to believe the love might actually be real. And then, without warning, the light in their eyes goes out. The same mouth that once spoke poetry now spits poison. You're not who I thought you were. You're so dramatic. I don't even know what I saw in you. And just like that, you're not a person anymore. You're a disappointment. This is devaluation, the second phase in the manipulator's cycle of control, and it's as cruel as it is calculated. They strip away your worth, piece by piece, after they've already made you depend on their validation. The pedestal wasn't built to honor you. It was built so they could enjoy watching you fall from it. What makes this tactic so devastating is its emotional whiplash. You're left clinging to the version of them who once adored you, trying to win them back, not realizing they never truly saw you, only what you could give. The shift is sudden but strategic. It's designed to confuse, punish, and destabilize. You question what you did wrong, try harder, offer more. But the truth is, it's not about what you did. It never was. It's about power, how much of your self-worth they can steal now that you've handed over your heart. Devaluation isn't rejection. It's annihilation of identity. And by the time you realize you've been discarded emotionally, you're already bleeding from wounds they'll claim you caused. Discarding, abrupt, emotional abandonment. One day, they're everything. Attentive, present, obsessed. You share your soul, your secrets, your future. It feels unshakable, like something sacred. And then, without warning, they're gone. The texts slow, the warmth vanishes, their eyes go cold. No explanation, no closure, just silence where love once lived. You replay every conversation, every moment, trying to find the switch that flipped. But the truth is, they were always planning to leave. Discarding isn't just walking away. It's the brutal, calculated abandonment of someone they once made feel essential. It's dropping you like dead weight the second your usefulness runs out, or the thrill fades, or someone else catches their eye. It's ghosting with intent, not to escape but to erase you. And it's done with surgical cruelty. They don't stumble through uncertainty. They don't wrestle with their decision. They vanish, unmoved, unbothered, already rewriting history to make you the problem. Meanwhile, you're left drowning in confusion, shame, and heartbreak, not just from their absence, but from the sheer speed and coldness of it. This isn't about love lost. It's about control maintained. The discard is a final message. You never mattered the way you thought you did. And the worst part? They often return later, sweet, nostalgic, missing you. Not because they care, but because they want to see if they still can. Discarding isn't a breakup. It's an execution, silent, swift, and designed to leave you questioning not just the relationship, but your worth, and the echo of it lingers long after they've moved on, like you were never there at all. False flattery, praise that manipulates more than uplifts. You're not like other people. I mean that. No one else could ever handle me the way you do. You're so mature, so understanding, so much better than the rest. It sounds like admiration. It feels like being cherished. But deep inside, something's off, because their compliments don't leave you feeling strong. They leave you feeling obligated, like now you have something to live up to, something you owe. That's the trap of false flattery. This isn't praise, it's positioning. The manipulator uses flattery not to celebrate you, but to bind you. Their compliments are strategic, not sincere. They inflate you in specific ways, ways that serve their control. They call you patient right before pushing your limits. They praise your loyalty when you're on the verge of leaving. They tell you you're strong when you've just been hurt, because strength to them means silence. And when you fail to live up to the version of you they've created, the shift is swift and cold. Wow, I thought you were different. You're not who I thought you were. The same words that once lifted you are now used to cut you down. False flattery isn't meant to make you feel good. It's meant to hook you, shape you, and guilt you into compliance. You don't realize it's manipulation because it wears the face of affection. But real praise doesn't feel like pressure. It doesn't leave you walking on eggshells, terrified to lose the image they loved, not of you, but of the version of you that never really existed. Controlling resources, money, time, access, people. At first, it seems helpful. They offer to pay for things, manage your schedule, handle situations so you don't have to. They say it's because they care, because they're just trying to make your life easier. But slowly, things stop feeling like gifts and start feeling like leverage. You notice you have to ask before spending money. They keep tabs on your time. They decide who you see, what you do, how much freedom you're allowed. And suddenly, your life isn't yours anymore. This is resource control, covert domination, not through violence or overt threats, but through access. They don't need to yell. They just have to withhold. Money becomes a tool. Maybe they're the only one working. Maybe they offer to support you, then make you feel guilty for every dollar. They start reminding you what you owe them. Your independence becomes something they quietly dismantle, one small decision at a time. Time becomes theirs too. They flood your schedule, discourage your hobbies, exhaust your emotional bandwidth. When you're always managing their needs, there's no energy left for your own. Then come the people. They plant doubt about your friends. They create tension with your family. They become the gatekeeper of your social world, subtly isolating you until the only person you really spend time with is them. This isn't protection. It's entrapment disguised as care. By controlling your resources, your freedom, your relationships, your sense of stability, they create a world where you're dependent on them for everything. And once you're dependent, they don't need to force you to stay. You'll stay because you feel like you can't afford to leave. Intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable rewards to addict you. One day, they're warm, attentive, overflowing with affection. You feel seen, adored, high on the connection. Then, nothing, silence, coldness, criticism. And just when you're about to walk away, they come back, sweeter than ever, a gift, a compliment, a night that feels like everything you've been missing. It's not consistent, it's not safe, but it's powerful, because now you're hooked. This is intermittent reinforcement, the psychological equivalent of gambling with your heart. You never know when the affection will return, so you keep pulling the lever, hoping for a hit. And when the reward finally comes, it feels so good it drowns out the pain that came before. You tell yourself the cold was worth it, that they're trying, that it's real. But it isn't real, it's conditioning. This tactic is one of the most manipulative and addictive forms of emotional abuse. It doesn't work by keeping you happy. It works by keeping you hoping. The uncertainty rewires your brain. You begin to crave their validation like a fix, measuring your self-worth by how they're treating you today. You shrink, shapeshift, abandon boundaries, anything to stay on their good side long enough for the next wave of tenderness. And they know exactly what they're doing. They're not confused. They're not inconsistent because of stress or mood swings. They're using inconsistency as a leash, tightening it with rejection, loosening it with affection, just enough to keep you chasing what was never meant to stay. Intermittent reinforcement doesn't love you. It uses you. And the longer you stay in the cycle, the harder it becomes to remember what real love ever looked like. Feigning illness or crisis to regain attention or control. Just when you begin to pull away, when you're gaining clarity, setting boundaries, or beginning to heal, they crumble. Suddenly, they're not okay. They're sick, in a crisis, spiraling. Their voice shakes, their eyes glaze, and they tell you they don't know how to cope without you. You were ready to leave. You were sure, but now you're afraid that walking away would make you heartless, that if something happened to them, it would be your fault. This is the emotional landmine of feigned illness or fabricated crisis. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, a sudden spike in anxiety, a vague mention of not wanting to be alive, a mysterious medical scare with no clear diagnosis. You drop everything, rush to be by their side, your own needs erased in the shadow of their emergency. But look closely, and you'll notice a chilling pattern. Their suffering always seems to resurface when you gain strength. This isn't real vulnerability. It's strategic helplessness. They weaponize your compassion, knowing your empathy will override your instincts, knowing you won't risk abandoning someone in pain. But their crisis is rarely about healing. It's about hooking you. They know if they can make you afraid for them, you'll stop being afraid of them. And so you stay, out of guilt, out of fear, out of love. But you're not helping someone in need. You're being pulled back into a cycle of emotional manipulation because they don't need a cure. What they need is your attention, your control, your silence. And the threat of their collapse is the chain they rattle every time you start to walk away, creating dependency, fostering reliance emotionally or financially. At first, it feels like care. They insist on helping. Let me take care of that. You don't need to worry about rent. I've got you. You don't need anyone else. You have me. It feels safe, comforting, even romantic. Slowly, your burdens melt away, but so does your independence. You start leaning on them more, asking less of others, making fewer decisions without their input. What you don't realize is that this wasn't generosity. It was a strategy, a cage disguised as kindness. Creating dependency is the slow suffocation of your autonomy. The manipulator wants you tied to them in ways that are hard to untangle. They'll encourage you to quit your job, alienate you from friends, make you emotionally reliant on their approval. They'll position themselves as your problem solver, your provider, your emotional anchor. But it's not because they want to support you, it's because they want to own you. Once dependency is established, the dynamic shifts. The favors become expectations. The help becomes leverage. After everything I do for you, they'll say, when you speak up, you'd be nothing without me. And suddenly, the very safety you relied on becomes the threat that keeps you silent. You feel trapped, not just emotionally, but practically, financially, socially. You stop making moves without checking with them. You doubt your own judgment. You fear losing their support more than you fear losing yourself. This isn't love. It's control by entanglement, because if you can't stand on your own, you'll never walk away. And that's exactly how they designed it. From the very first time they said, "Don't worry, I've got you." Dismissing your emotions as invalid or overblown, you finally speak up, your voice trembling, your heart raw. You say it hurt. You say you're scared. You say you feel disrespected, dismissed, or unseen. But instead of comfort, you're met with a smirk, a scoff, or a flat, chilling sentence. You're overreacting. In that moment, your pain is erased, not healed, not questioned, not cared for, just deleted, as if what you felt didn't matter, as if you didn't matter. This is emotional dismissal, and it cuts deeper than cruelty because it wears the mask of rationality. They don't scream at you. They don't call you names. They simply make you feel stupid for having feelings at all. You're too sensitive. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. You're always so dramatic. These aren't just statements. They're weapons, carefully designed to chip away at your self-trust. You start to doubt yourself. Did you blow it out of proportion? Should you just let it go? You replay the moment over and over, looking for proof that your pain was real. But when you have to defend your right to feel hurt, you're no longer healing, you're performing. And that performance slowly kills your voice. Emotional dismissal is how manipulators train you to suppress your own alarm system. It's how they teach you to silence your needs, your instincts, your reactions, until you don't even bother speaking up at all. Because what's the point? They've convinced you that your emotions aren't truth, they're flaws, and the more they invalidate your feelings, the more power they gain. Because a person who can't trust their own emotions is easier to control, easier to gaslight, and easier to keep quiet, blaming you for their reactions. You made me do it. They explode in anger, shut down for days, insult you, break something, betray your trust, and when the dust settles, you expect remorse, accountability, something, but instead you get this. I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't. Their voice is calm, maybe even trembling with hurt. You pushed me, you made me do it, and suddenly their behavior isn't the problem. You are. This is blame shifting at its most abusive, turning their reactions into your fault. The manipulator flips the script with expert precision. Instead of owning their choices, they rewrite the moment into a reaction. Their cruelty becomes a consequence of your tone, their betrayal, a response to your neglect, their rage, a defense against your attacks. Every time they cross a line, they drag you across it first, so you're too busy apologizing to ever hold them accountable. And it works, because you start believing it. You question if you were too harsh, too emotional, too demanding. You think, if I'd just done it differently, maybe they wouldn't have snapped. You try harder, shrink smaller, speak softer, anything to keep the peace, anything to avoid triggering another storm they'll pin on you. But here's the truth. You didn't make them do anything. They chose it. And by blaming you, they keep their hands clean while you carry the guilt for their behavior. Blaming you for their reactions isn't just deflection. It's a method of psychological control. It rewrites your role in their dysfunction until you feel responsible for your own mistreatment. And that's exactly how they keep doing it, again and again, while convincing you it's all your fault. Sabotaging your success. They say they're proud of you. They smile when you mention a promotion, a new project, a personal goal. They say the right things, but behind the scenes, their support starts to slip. They forget to remind you about that big meeting. They distract you the night before your presentation. They plant quiet doubts. Are you sure you can handle that? What if it's too much? And before you even realize what's happening, you're stumbling over roadblocks they placed in your path. Sabotaging your success isn't about open opposition. It's about subtle, calculated interference. They don't want you to fail outright. That would be too obvious. What they want is for you to doubt yourself, to slow down just enough that you lose momentum. Your growth threatens them. Your power, your independence, your rising confidence, it pulls you away from their control. So they undermine you in the softest ways possible. A passive, aggressive comment, a missed message, a forgotten errand that throws off your day. And when you do struggle, they're right there. See, I knew it would be too much. They position themselves as the wise voice, the one who tried to warn you. They break your stride and then act like your failure was inevitable. Over time, you stop reaching as far. You play smaller. You keep your dreams quiet because part of you fears they'll find a way to crush them. And the more you shrink, the safer they feel, because your success was never something they celebrated. It was something they needed to control or kill. Exploiting your compassion, they come to you wounded, broken by their past, misunderstood by everyone, burdened by scars they claim no one else has ever cared enough to see. And you, with your open heart and soft edges, lean in. You listen. You hold space. You give them grace, even when it hurts. But what you don't see right away is that your kindness isn't being received, it's being used. Exploiting your compassion is one of the manipulator's most insidious tactics because it doesn't look like control. It looks like love, like trust, like a bond. But underneath, they are testing the elasticity of your empathy, how much they can stretch it before it snaps. They cry in your arms one night and disregard your feelings the next. They lean on your support, but vanish when you need theirs. And every time you begin to draw a boundary, they bring you back with stories of pain. You're the only one who understands me. I thought you were different. The manipulation is rooted in your desire to help. You want to believe they're trying. You want to be patient, forgiving, good, but they're not growing. They're draining. They use your compassion like currency, trading on your guilt, your nurturing nature, your hope that one day they'll finally heal. But they won't, because healing was never the goal. Control was, and the more you give, the less you're allowed to ask for in return. They turn your kindness into a trap, where leaving them feels cruel and staying feels like your duty. And slowly, your empathy becomes the weapon they use to keep you from saving yourself. Faking accountability with fake apologies. They look you in the eyes and say, "I'm sorry," but the words land hollow, not because you're unforgiving, but because you know they don't mean it. Their voice lacks weight, their body doesn't soften, and worse, their next sentence reveals the truth. "I'm sorry you feel that way." I said I'm sorry. What more do you want? Let's just move on. These aren't apologies, they're performances. Fake accountability is a manipulator's get-out-of-jail-free card. It mimics remorse to escape consequence. They don't take ownership of what they did. They don't name it. They don't sit with the impact. They apologize around the harm, never for it. The goal isn't to heal you. It's to shut you up. It's to check the box labeled, "I said sorry," so they can flip the narrative and say, you're the one who's dragging things out, being dramatic or holding a grudge. And the trap works, because hearing an apology triggers hope. You want to believe they finally get it. You want the pain to mean something, so you forgive. Again, you lower your guard, thinking maybe this time it'll change. But nothing changes. The cycle repeats. The same hurt resurfaces, and you realize the apology wasn't a turning point. It was a tactic. Real accountability is uncomfortable. It costs something. Fake accountability is effortless, and it buys them more time to hurt you again. When someone fakes remorse, they're not trying to make things right. They're trying to reset the power balance without changing their behavior. And the longer you accept it, the more they learn that sounding sorry is all they ever have to be. Turning others against you subtly. It doesn't start with slander. It starts with concern. I love them, but I worry sometimes. Have you noticed how emotional they've been lately? I just hope they're okay. The manipulator doesn't attack you outright, not at first. That would be too obvious. Instead, they plant quiet doubts, whispers wrapped in faux compassion, and by the time you realize what's happening, people have already begun to step back, to look at you differently, to trust you a little less. This is social sabotage by erosion, not explosion. They weaponize subtlety to isolate you without getting their hands dirty. While they smile to your face, they paint you as unstable, difficult, or dramatic behind your back. Not with lies, but with half-truths and just sharing moments designed to skew how others see you. And the brilliance of this tactic is that it's so quiet, so measured, no one suspects it. least of all you. When you finally start to feel the shift, missed calls, awkward silences, people who used to lean in now leaning away, you question yourself. You wonder what you did. You try to over-explain, to prove you're not what they've heard. And every attempt only makes you look more guilty, more defensive, more like the person the manipulator said you were. That's the trap. They don't just want people to stop liking you. They want you alone, disarmed, unsure of who to trust. Because once they control the narrative, they control your reality. And when they've made you the villain in everyone else's eyes, they become your only safe place, even though they're the one lighting the match behind the curtain, using your dreams' goals to control you. They start by listening, really listening. They ask about your passions, your goals, your biggest hopes, where you want to go, who you want to become, what keeps you up at night with possibility. You open up, feeling inspired, understood, believed in. They echo your vision, tell you how much potential you have. They say things like, "You're gonna make it, I'll help you get there," or "I see something in you no one else does," and you believe them because they sound like the first person who truly does. But it's not encouragement, it's entrapment. Once they've mapped out your dream, they begin tying it to them. "You'd never get there without me. Don't screw this up. I'm the only one supporting you. Be careful, this could all fall apart." They turn your dream into a leash, something they can tug whenever you challenge their authority, express independence, or show signs of growing beyond their control. You start tolerating things you hate just to protect the future they convinced you they control. You swallow mistreatment, delay your intuition, sacrifice your peace, because they've made you believe that without their support, you'll never reach what matters most to you. They hold your dream hostage, dangling it over your head like a promise and a threat. And the deeper your dream runs, the more power they have. This isn't about helping you succeed. It's about owning the path to your success. Because when someone learns what you live for, they can control how far you're willing to fall just to keep moving toward it. And they will use it, not to build you up, but to keep you exactly where they want you. Getting mad when you're happy. Your laughter fills the room, your smile lingers, your energy feels light, and just when you're finally coming up for air, they darken the sky. A sharp comment, a sudden mood shift, a distant silence that cuts through your joy like a knife. "You're being loud. Must be nice to be so carefree." "I guess you don't care about what I'm going through." You pause, confused, then guilty. Why does your happiness feel like a threat? Because to them, it is. When someone gets mad at your joy, it's not because they're sad, it's because they're losing control. Your happiness means you're not dependent, not broken, not dancing to their emotional tune, and that independence terrifies them. They need you small, uncertain, wrapped in their moods. So when you begin to rise, they pull you back down, not always through rage, but through subtle punishment, withdrawal, guilt, criticism, comparison. They'll find something wrong in your joy just to poison it. If you share good news, they'll find a flaw in it. If you shine, they'll squint like it's too much. If you're laughing, they'll remind you who isn't. And soon you learn joy comes with consequence. So you start to hide it, dim it. You downplay the things that light you up. You tiptoe around your own happiness, afraid of the backlash. But that's the goal. They don't want you fulfilled. They want you tethered to their moods, their needs, their approval. Because if you're happy without them, they lose the one thing they can't stand to live without: power over you. Weaponizing their own trauma as a shield, they tell you their story early on, sometimes all at once, sometimes in carefully timed fragments. Childhood abuse, toxic exes, betrayals, pain, so much pain. You listen with compassion, your heart breaking for what they've been through. You hold them. You forgive their mood swings, their silence, their sharpness, because you tell yourself they've been hurt. And you're right, they have. But what you don't see yet is how they're using that pain not to heal, but to control you. When someone weaponizes their trauma, they turn their wounds into armor. Anytime you bring up how they've hurt you, it bounces off. I've been through too much to deal with this right now. You have no idea how hard it is for me. You should be more understanding. And just like that, your feelings are dismissed, not because they aren't valid, but because their past is positioned as more important than your present. Their trauma becomes the ultimate deflection. You start tiptoeing around them. You suppress your needs, silence your voice, absorb their outbursts, because calling them out feels cruel. You feel guilty for expecting more, for needing boundaries, for being hurt by someone who has already suffered so much. But real trauma doesn't excuse harm. It doesn't justify emotional warfare. It doesn't give someone the right to hurt you and then hide behind the echo of their own pain. They're not being vulnerable. They're being untouchable. By weaponizing their story, they create a fortress of sympathy around themselves. So anytime you dare to ask for more, you're painted as heartless. And every time you back down, they learn that their scars can silence you. Criticizing you publicly, praising you privately, they save the compliments for when no one's listening. Soft-spoken praise behind closed doors, whispered affection in moments no one else sees. You know I'm proud of you, right? You're amazing, even if I don't always say it. But when the spotlight turns on, so does their disapproval. They mock you in front of friends, correct you in meetings, roll their eyes at your ideas. Just kidding, they say with a smirk after cutting you down. You're so sensitive. This is not inconsistency, it's psychological positioning. By criticizing you publicly and praising you privately, the manipulator carefully curates the story everyone sees. You're the flawed one. They're just being honest. They craft a persona of harmless bluntness while you shrink beneath the sting of their words. And when you finally speak up, when you say you feel humiliated, dismissed, hurt, they remind you of everything they've said in private. I tell you how great you are all the time. Don't make a scene, but the private praise is never for you. It's maintenance. Just enough reassurance to keep you from leaving, from confronting, from believing your pain is real. It keeps you confused, off balance, tethered to a version of them that only exists when no one else is watching. Meanwhile, the public humiliation chips away at your credibility. People laugh when they mock you. Some even agree, and slowly you begin to doubt yourself. Maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe they're just keeping you grounded. But they're not grounding you. They're burying you. One smile in private, one sting in public at a time, shaming your boundaries as selfish. You finally speak up. You say, I can't do this right now, or I need space, or that doesn't feel okay to me. Your voice trembles, but you feel strong for a moment. Then comes the reaction. Their eyes narrow, their tone sharpens. Wow, so it's all about you now? I guess your needs matter more than anyone else's. You've really changed. The warmth disappears, the guilt floods in, and suddenly you're no longer standing up for yourself. You're defending yourself for having needs at all. This is how manipulators shame your boundaries into extinction. They frame your limits not as healthy, but as selfish, not as self-respect, but as betrayal. They twist your no into rejection. Your self-protection becomes a personal attack. And worst of all, they do it so convincingly that you start to wonder, am I being cruel? Am I pushing them away? You're not. You're protecting your peace, but they can't control someone who knows how to say no, so they teach you to fear saying it, to feel guilty, to see yourself as cold, distant, uncaring. And over time, you start shrinking again. You answer calls you don't want to take. You give energy you don't have. You let things slide that tear at your spirit just to avoid being called selfish. And that's the trap. They teach you that love means sacrificing your boundaries, that being good means being available, always. But the truth is, anyone who shames your limits isn't loving you. They're trying to erase you, boundary by boundary, until the only thing left standing in the relationship is them, requiring loyalty but offering none. They expect you to be there. No questions, no delays. They demand your silence when they screw up, your defense when others doubt them, your unwavering support even when it costs you everything. I thought you had my back. After everything I've shared with you, you're supposed to be loyal. And so you stay quiet. You protect them. You sacrifice your comfort, your values, sometimes even your relationships, because they've framed loyalty as love, as proof, as a test you must pass. But when it's your turn, they vanish. They don't defend you in rooms where you're not present. They don't show up when you need support. Worse, they join the criticism, laugh at your expense, or say, I just didn't want to get involved. You realize the loyalty you gave was never mutual. It was a leash. This tactic is emotional servitude disguised as devotion. They wrap themselves in the language of loyalty, not because they believe in it, but because they know you do. They demand it from you while remaining free of its burden themselves. And when you finally ask why the loyalty isn't returned, you're accused of being selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. They weaponize your loyalty to keep you compliant, obedient, ashamed of even thinking about walking away. But loyalty, in their hands, becomes a trap, a one-way street lined with your silence, your sacrifices, your suffering. They never wanted loyalty. They wanted ownership, and they dressed it in words that made you feel honorable for staying, while they never stayed for you at all, attaching self-worth to their approval. At first, their praise feels like sunlight. Every smile, every I'm proud of you, every moment of recognition lights you up inside. You feel valuable, seen, like you finally matter to someone who really sees you. But slowly, you start needing it, craving it, basing your sense of worth on whether they're warm or cold that day. And without realizing it, your self-esteem stops coming from within. It becomes something they control. This is one of the most dangerous manipulations, attaching your self-worth to their approval. They don't even have to say it out loud. It's in how they withhold affection when you disappoint them, how they go quiet when you assert yourself, how they light up only when you're useful, agreeable, attractive, easy. Their attention becomes conditional, and you learn to mold yourself to fit their expectations, just to feel okay. You begin chasing validation like a lifeline, trying harder, shrinking smaller, apologizing for things you shouldn't. You celebrate their rare praise like a starving person celebrates crumbs, because they've made you believe that when they like you, you're good, and when they don't, you're failing. But here's the truth. Their approval isn't love. It's a leash. And the more you tie your worth to their opinion, the more power they have to shape who you are, to inflate or crush you on a whim, to make you forget that you were whole before they ever said you were enough. Because real love doesn't make your value conditional. Manipulation does. And once they've made you believe your worth depends on them, they never have to lift a finger to control you. You'll do it to yourself. Encouraging competition with others. They mention someone just a little too often. An ex, a friend, a coworker. She's actually hilarious. You'd like her. He really gets me, you know? At first, it seems innocent. Maybe you even laugh along. But over time, you start to notice a pattern. They highlight others' traits that outshine yours, subtly compare, praise them in areas where you already feel unsure, and soon, without ever saying it directly, they've dropped you into an invisible ring where your worth is constantly measured against someone else. This is not about admiration. It's psychological warfare. Encouraging competition is a manipulator's way of creating insecurity while staying above the blame. They pit you against people in their orbit, sometimes strangers, sometimes people they've been romantically linked to, and then sit back and watch. They want you on edge, performing, trying harder, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough. They won't tell you you're losing. They don't have to. They just keep feeding you reminders that others are smarter, sexier, more fun, more whatever, and let your mind do the damage.
You start molding yourself to match their hints. You start competing for attention that should have been freely given.
And if you bring it up, they'll act innocent. You're imagining things. You're insecure, not me. But the truth is, they wanted you insecure because a confident, grounded partner is harder to control. But someone who feels replaceable, they'll cling, chase, and tolerate almost anything to stay. This isn't love. It's emotional manipulation dressed as admiration for others. And the prize of this unspoken competition, them. But the cost is always you. Blaming you for how others treat them. They walk in sulking, irritated, maybe even enraged. Your friend was rude to me again. Your mom doesn't respect me. Everyone at your job treats me like a joke. And somehow, without saying it directly, the conclusion is always the same. It's your fault. Not because you said anything wrong, not because you did anything, but because you didn't stop it demad. You didn't protect them. You didn't manage how the world responded to them. And now you're responsible for everyone else's actions. This is a cruel and subtle shift of blame, a way to make you feel guilty for things you can't control, so they can control you. They make your relationships feel like landmines. You start walking on eggshells around your own friends, distancing from family, filtering your words in every room to avoid setting them off later. And over time, you begin to carry a weight that was never yours. The emotional fallout of every interaction they twist into an attack. But here's what's really happening. They're not hurt by others. They're using others as a mirror to punish you. It's never about that friend's sarcasm or your co-worker's tone or your cousin's side glance. It's about controlling your environment, isolating you, and forcing you to take emotional responsibility for their unhappiness. Because if they can convince you it's your job to protect them from the world, they never have to look at the real source of the conflict, themselves. And eventually, you stop defending yourself. You start defending them, even from people who were only ever trying to love you. Punishing you for honesty. You tell the truth about something that hurt, something you need, something that doesn't sit right. You speak it gently, carefully, maybe even trembling, hoping for connection or at least understanding. But instead of meeting you with respect, they recoil, go cold, or explode. They roll their eyes, twist your words, weaponize your vulnerability, and in that moment, you learn a brutal lesson. Telling the truth doesn't bring you closer. It brings consequences. This is how manipulators punish honesty, not with obvious backlash, but with emotional retaliation designed to silence you next time. They might not yell. Sometimes they just go quiet, distant, withhold affection, make you feel like a burden for being real. Sometimes they mock your feelings later. You're so sensitive. I can't believe you brought that up again. You end up feeling like you did something wrong, not for being cruel, but for being honest. And it works. Over time, you start editing yourself. You shrink the truth, package it to sound more palatable, or you stop sharing altogether because it's safer to pretend than to deal with the fallout. You become a version of yourself designed to keep the peace while your needs rot silently inside you. That's the goal. By punishing your honesty, they make your truth dangerous to you. They condition you to betray your own voice just to keep their approval. And when someone makes you afraid to speak your truth, you're not in a relationship, you're in a cage, one where the key is silence and the lock was built with your own words. Calling you too sensitive. When hurt, you speak up, maybe nervously, maybe with trembling honesty, about something they did that cut deep, a joke that felt like a jab, a broken promise, a moment they dismissed your pain. You don't accuse, you don't attack, you just express. And then it comes, the smirk, the sigh, the eye roll. You're too sensitive. The phrase hits harder than the original offense, turning your wound into a flaw, your vulnerability into a punchline. This is not feedback, it's dismissal. Calling you too sensitive is a way to flip the script. It reframes your emotional response as the problem, not their behavior. They don't have to reflect, apologize, or take accountability. They just label you as weak, dramatic, or broken, and the more they say it, the more you start to believe it. So you stop bringing things up. You bury your reactions. You teach yourself not to flinch, not to speak, not to feel too much. You become the person who laughs off insults, who shrugs through neglect, who pretends that nothing ever hurts, because they've convinced you that pain equals weakness. But the truth is, you're not too sensitive. You're accurately aware. You're emotionally intelligent. You see things others miss, feel things deeply, and recognize when something's off. And they can't handle that. Because your sensitivity threatens their control, it calls out the very harm they want to go unchecked. So they shame it, mock it, label it as a defect. But your sensitivity was never the issue. Their inability to face the impact of their actions was. And every time they call you too sensitive, what they really mean is stop noticing what I don't want to be blamed for. Pretending they forgot your achievements. You finally share the good news, your promotion, the project you poured your soul into, the personal win you've been chasing for years. You expect celebration, a proud smile, even a simple, wow, I'm happy for you. But instead they blink, distracted. Oh yeah, you told me that already, didn't you? Or worse, wait, when did that happen again? And in a split second, your triumph shrinks into discomfort. You start justifying, explaining, minimizing. Why doesn't it matter to them? It does. That's exactly why they pretend it doesn't. This tactic is about control, not forgetfulness. When someone claims they forgot your achievement or glosses over it, they're not being absent-minded. They're robbing you of emotional oxygen, diminishing your moment so you stay grounded beneath them. Because every time you rise, they feel smaller. And rather than face that insecurity, they pretend your light isn't even on. They want you doubting your significance, not just in the world, but in their eyes. They want you wondering, was it really that big of a deal? Am I overreacting? And when you start questioning your own worth, they gain power, not by putting you down directly, but by refusing to lift you up when it matters most. It's a subtle form of erasure, because if they can't celebrate you, they can control you. And if they act like they've forgotten your wins, eventually you will too. That's the point, not to deny what you've done, but to deny you the joy of feeling seen for it. Conflating criticism with disloyalty. You offer feedback, gentle, honest, maybe even necessary. You point out a pattern that hurts, a behavior that needs to change. You speak from a place of care, not condemnation, but instead of reflection, you're met with a look of betrayal, cold eyes, a wounded tone. I thought you were on my side. So now you're just like everyone else? And in that moment, your truth is recast as treason. This is how manipulators conflate criticism with disloyalty, to silence you. They create a world where loving them means agreeing with them, supporting them means staying silent, and loyalty means never questioning their actions. Any attempt to set a boundary or ask for better is seen not as connection, but as betrayal. They make you choose between your voice and your place in their life, and you begin to fold. You start holding your thoughts in. You downplay what hurts you. You swallow your needs because you're terrified that speaking them will make you the enemy. You become agreeable, small, careful, not because you want to be, but because they've taught you that to disagree is to abandon them, that if you love them, you'll let them hurt you quietly. But real love can handle truth. What they're really saying is, my comfort matters more than your honesty. My ego matters more than your experience. They're not asking for loyalty, they're demanding submission, and by weaponizing your care against you, they train you to betray yourself just to prove you haven't betrayed them, making you afraid of their moods. At first, you think they're just moody, maybe stressed, sensitive. You give them space. You excuse the silence, the irritation, the sudden cold shoulder. But slowly, you start noticing a pattern. You're adjusting everything around how they feel, the way you speak, the timing of your words, what you ask for, what you don't. Their mood becomes the weather of your world, and you learn how to forecast it better than your own needs. This isn't emotional depth, it's dominance through volatility. The manipulator conditions you to fear their emotional states. When they're upset, doors slam, faces harden, words cut or disappear entirely. You feel the shift before it's spoken, like walking barefoot into a room full of broken glass. And the worst part? You never know why. Maybe you said too much, maybe not enough. Maybe they're punishing you for something they haven't even explained. It's never clear, and that's by design. You begin anticipating their moods before they even change. You stay quiet when you should speak. You apologize when you're the one hurting. You monitor your happiness, your truth, your identity, just to avoid triggering the next storm. And in doing so, you slowly disappear. This is emotional control disguised as sensitivity. They don't have to yell or make demands. Your fear does the work for them. Because when someone makes you afraid of how they'll feel, they're not sharing their emotions. They're weaponizing them, not to connect, but to cage, not to express, but to dominate, until your peace depends entirely on their unpredictable state of mind, holding grudges secretly, long term. They smile, they say it's fine, they act like they've moved on, but beneath the calm exterior, something's festering, quiet, unseen, waiting. You thought the conflict was resolved, the tension gone, you apologize, you grew, but weeks, months, even years later, they bring it up again, not to heal, but to hurt. Funny, coming from you. Let's not forget what you did. And just like that, you're dragged back into a fight you thought was long buried. This is the hidden grudge, a weapon kept in the dark until the moment it can do the most damage. Unlike open resentment, this form of manipulation is strategic. They don't express anger when it's relevant. They bottle it up and use it later to disarm, to guilt, to gain the upper hand. They store your mistakes like ammunition, saving them for moments when you're vulnerable, confident, or calling them out. Their memory is selective, but razor sharp, only when it serves them. And the worst part? You never know what's still unforgiven, so you walk on eggshells. You over-apologize. You start doubting your right to move on, to grow, to be seen as anything other than who you were when you messed up. They've turned your past into a leash, and you never know when they'll yank it. Holding grudges secretly isn't about justice. It's about control. It's about reminding you that no matter how much you change, they still hold the narrative. And as long as they do, you'll always feel one step away from being shamed by a version of yourself you've already outgrown. Making threats sound like jokes. They say it with a laugh, a smirk, a playful tone that disarms you just enough to ignore the chill running down your spine. Imagine if I just disappeared and ghosted you. Don't mess up, or I'll find someone who doesn't. One day I might snap. Haha, kidding. Sort of. The words hang in the air. Ridiculous, right? Silly. Just a joke. But your body tightens. Your mind replays it. Because deep down, you know, it wasn't a joke. This is how manipulators test your boundaries. By wrapping threats in humor. They deliver their darkness with a grin. So if you react, you're the one who can't take a joke. Relax, I was only kidding. Wow, sensitive much? But the message was sent. They meant for you to hear it, to feel the subtle shift in power, to wonder, would they actually do that? Are they serious? And so begins the second-guessing spiral. Not of them, of you. The threat is real. The joke is the disguise. It's a masterstroke of manipulation. They get to assert dominance while preserving deniability. They plant fear without taking responsibility for it. And each time you brush it off, they go a little further, a little darker. And you laugh along, even when it hurts, because calling it out means being the killjoy. The problem, the one who can't take a little teasing. But it's not teasing, it's training, a psychological rehearsal of how far they can go before you say enough. And when you don't, the joke becomes prophecy. The punchline lands exactly where they meant it to, right in your trust. turning your needs into burdens. You express something small, something human. I just need some reassurance. I could really use your support today. That hurt me more than I expected. You speak softly, maybe even apologetically, because you don't want to be too much. But still, their reaction comes swift and heavy, a sigh, a look of irritation, a deflective joke. God, do we have to talk about this again? You're so needy sometimes. I have my own problems, you know. And just like that, your need becomes a nuisance. This is how manipulators turn your emotional needs into burdens, not by saying no, but by making you feel guilty for even asking. It's not just rejection, it's a quiet shaming. Over time, you internalize it. You begin to hesitate before expressing yourself. You tell yourself not to ask for too much. You start managing their emotions instead of honoring your own. You carry their weight, their silence, their discomfort, hoping that if you stay low maintenance enough, they'll finally meet you where you are. But they won't, because this tactic isn't about emotional incompatibility. It's about emotional control. If they can convince you that your needs are excessive, inconvenient, or selfish, then they never have to meet them. They never have to grow. They never have to give. And eventually, you start to abandon your needs, not because they're wrong, but because you've been made to feel wrong for having them. That's the manipulation, turning your basic, beautiful humanity into something that feels like a flaw, just so they don't have to show up.